Let's get on to Kelsey with the winning quarterback, MJ Morris.
MJ, congratulations. You told us this week you just wanted to come out here, have fun, treat it like practice, and find your open wide receivers. You were able to do that. What does this one feel like?
It feels great just knowing that everybody executed. We all did our job. We all played as a team. I mean, we started off slow in the first couple drives, but when we started that connection, we was just over from there. We kind of clicked, we kind of bond, and we just all did our.
Just another week of college football. Nothing to see here, folks. All right, welcome in, everyone. It's great to see everybody here at the Voice of College Football on another Saturday night. We have precious few of these left. Let's soak them up. Let's cherish them. Week 10 of college football did not disappoint. Neither did LSU. Bama fans may be disappointed by their team, but should not be by the effort in Death Valley. That was the highlight of the day. No question about it. The most important result, the best game, all meeting in one place in Death Valley. LSU on Brian Kelly's decision and Jaden Daniels' pass to the tight end in the end zone there. One Mason Taylor. LSU 32, Alabama 31. The other big result from the primetime window, of course, was Clemson going to Notre Dame and getting whacked, walloped, beaten upside the head, taken to the woodshed in every possible way, just beaten to death. 35-14 does not show or indicate properly the Notre Dame domination in that one. 28-0 at one point after a pick six. DJ Oyangale benched. Cade Klubnik came in and promptly threw practically a pick six, and DJ came back into the game. We are brought to you on this fine November Saturday night by tailgate.live. Tailgate.live. We will tell you more about the exciting launch and what the folks at tailgate.live have for you as college football fans. Let's get to the calls. It's all about you. It's all about your discussion, your opinions. And I have much to say, of course, but I will respond to you guys first and foremost. So we've left the link there in the live chat. Keep in mind that we are here talking college football all the time, so we need your support to continue this. We would love to be able to do this next season, the season after that, the season after that. Don't force me to go have to do something else that I don't want to do. So please support the channel, subscribe to the channels, like the videos, do all those good things, push these links out on social media, let people know that we are here each and every day talking college football with all of you. The Amazon link, that's an easy way to support the channel. When you shop on Amazon, use the link in the description section of all the videos. Go to any of the videos, pull the Amazon link. It's at the very top of the description section. Put it somewhere where you won't miss it, where you will remember it when you are shopping online at Amazon. If we pull everyone together that shops on Amazon and they use the link, then we can obviously continue to grow and build the channel. All right, let's get to it on a big Week 10 that will certainly shake up the college football playoff rankings. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mark. How you doing?
I am doing great myself.
Oh man, today with one exception, I did not like Little Brother beating Illinois in Champaign. which I don't even understand because half their team's in jail. So how did they win that game?
The important half made it to the game. They took the trip.
I guess so, but I mean, you really couldn't script this any better. I mean, Bama loses, so we can finally quit with the whole 3 SEC team in the playoff conversation. That is dead in the water. I mean, I thought it was dead in the water too before, but it seems like there are certain SEC homers that just want to keep up that illusion. And
they could still get 2 in.
And I think that's a legitimate possibility. Less if TCU runs the table, and I mean, other than Texas, I don't see anything that can trip them up. But I don't know because the Big 12 is kind of cool.
I think about anybody on their schedule can trip them up. They got Baylor, and I don't remember the other game. They've got 4 more games, so
and
a lot
Baylor
of opportunity for
beat Oklahoma.
TCU's almost tripping up every week. So I would not be surprised to see them trip up in any one of those 4 games.
And that's the reason why I was down in the Big 12, because I mean, the Big 12 just does not look like it. They just cannibalize themselves more than any conference I've ever seen, even more than the ACC. I mean,
are you talking about this season?
Yeah.
Well, they have 2 through 10, but not number 1.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for TCU to slip up once, and then
it looks like they're going to, but they have yet to do that. Something bails them out every week, whether it's an injury on the other side, or today. I'm not going to say that they didn't legitimately win that game, but there was a point in the game that I pointed out, posted a video where the officials completely botched a call that would have ended a TCU series in which they were losing by 4 points with 10 minutes left in the game. So even though they won fairly comfortably in the end, they were down by 4 points with 10 minutes left in the game, and they were stopped. Yep. And some official saw a phantom face mask somewhere. They should have reviewed it. And that 15 yards, it converted the first down, and it marched TCU on to the lead score, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was some bad officiating in a lot of games. In fact, I saw in Clemson, in their first of 2 scoring drives, they Notre Dame, they flagged 3 consecutive plays for pass interference. The first one was legit. The second one was kind of iffy, and the third one was, I don't know what they were throwing it at, but that's the only reason Clemson was, even within 21 points instead of it just, they could have very easily got shut out, which would have been embarrassing because Notre Dame, I guess I can't say they're not a good team now because they're 6-3, and they do have a couple feathers in their cap right now.
They sure do. They've got a few. They beat Syracuse. They beat North Carolina by 3 scores each, and now they've blasted Clemson. They're a good football team. They've ruined their season for any kind of championship hopes, and they did it to themselves. But yeah, they're a really good football team with a lot of talent. So I think they're finally putting it together. We're seeing the teams are different in week 10 than in week 1.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's the Wolverine in me, but I was kind of wanting to keep Notre Dame low as kind of a justification for them Ohio State kind of squeaking by them. I'll admit my bias on that one.
Of course, that's understandable. Of course,
I was kind of glad. I was thinking in my mind as I was watching the overtime, I was like, I bet Brian Kelly goes for 2 here because it seemed like momentum was kind of on his side. It's like, I don't think he wants to really drag this out. He seems like he wanted to end it right now, and I'm glad he did.
I don't know what the analytics say about that. I'm not sure. I think the analytics have been really good for the sport and good for coaches, mostly. Some take it to an extreme, and you got to use some common sense, and you have to understand the flow of the game. The analytics don't know anything about the flow of the game or how the athletes out there are responding or anything like that. So you still have to be a real head coach and not just rely on a card. But I don't know what it says about the 2-point conversion there to
Well, I think the conversion rate is below 50%. So if you go strictly by numbers, he probably should have kicked and taken to a second overtime.
Yeah.
I think the overall numbers are something like in the high 40s as far as conversion rates for 2-pointers. Now, a lot of this depends on, how good the offense is on one side,
Sure.
how good the defense is on one side. But it kind of looked like towards the end, all the defenses were tired.
Yeah, and that's one reason to go for it. I thought LSU had a bit of a disadvantage in that their defense had to go right back out onto the field for the first overtime after they suffered through that long touchdown drive. They had to march right back out onto the field, and they gave up another touchdown.
Yeah. And I said Tennessee looked terrible. I knew Georgia's defense was good, but I wasn't sold on Tennessee really being a legitimate number one. I thought Georgia was the better team, and they proved that today. But I thought a lot of Tennessee's hype was, they hung a 52 on an Alabama defense I have no respect for. I know they've got some names.
You have no respect for the Alabama defense.
Okay, let me rephrase. I have less respect for them than I normally would in an Alabama defense.
That's fair.
They're not North Carolina, but
no, I can't think of a whole lot of defenses I would take above them. There's a few, not many.
This is the same. Hung 52 on them. Got what, 13?
Sure. You're making some comparisons that are partially valid. They're not completely valid.
And you have to take into the fact that the Alabama game was at home and
Sure.
the Georgia game was in Athens.
Yeah.
That does matter.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it matters by 39 points.
But every day, every matchup brings out a different number of elements. So I think you making those comparisons, there's validity to it. I do the same thing, but you can't make that direct comparison because we can prove whatever we want and disprove whatever we want making those kind of comparisons. Yeah.
And like I said, I've got to say, I'm finally glad that, for all the crap we get, this team, this team played you close. This team almost beat you. Ohio State looked terrible. 14-7 against Northwestern, who I would have them as the second worst Power 5 team. I think Colorado was slightly below.
Or it was 21-7, but I get your point. Yeah, 21-7.
14-7 at the beginning of the fourth. They had a garbage time touchdown, but
yeah,
that was a game that
I don't know if that defines as a garbage time touchdown when you're up by a touchdown and you're trying to score a touchdown and the defense is trying to stop you. But anyway, go ahead.
Still, 21-7, against Northwestern, like I said, second worst Power 5 in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not a good showing. But
I'm going to hear all the it was raining stuff.
Fortunately, we can say whatever we want for 3 weeks, and they're playing for a Big Ten championship appearance in 3 weeks.
Yep, that's true. And I'm not thrilled with our win either. And I know the final score was big, but it's kind of like, it reminds me of Ohio State against Iowa. Ohio State, threw would they beat them by 38? They beat Iowa by 30, but it wasn't a dominant win.
54-10, 44 points. Yeah.
44. The score says it was dominant. The field says it wasn't, kind of like our game.
It became dominant. Both of them became dominant at some point.
I saw a lot of wrinkles in Michigan today that I did not care for. Our secondary looked suspect.
I did not see any of the game, even though I flipped it on late.
We had our cornerbacks were losing 50-50 balls. Rutgers, got a bunch of guys that are like 6'2", 6'3", and they were just beating us on 50-50 balls. Now we did get, a couple interceptions and pick six, but overall I wasn't too thrilled about it. So, but now our red zone looked a lot better. I think I don't know what we ended, but I know we were in our first 4 red zone trips, we had 4 touchdowns. I don't know what it ended because once the game was obviously in hand, I switched over to LSU-Alabama because that was the only close game. By the time that would happen, Clemson had already pretty much had it in the bag as a loss, and our game wasn't competitive, so I just switched over to LSU-Alabama because it was the only worthwhile game to watch that was actually you didn't know what the result was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Mike.
Nope.
I appreciate you stopping by. We've got a line of folks.
All right, bring them on.
Yeah,
thanks a lot, Mark.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, so
hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing just fine, Darrell. So I accidentally punched you on here. So to finish up Mike's point, just in regards to the matchup we'll see in 3 weeks, Ohio State can't run the ball. Can't run the ball with a running back. So that's something that we'll be talking about over the next several weeks. All right, Darrell, what's going on tonight?
I think Mike took an unveiled shot at me when he said some SEC homers were predicting a 3-team SEC playoff, Mark. I think that comment might have been directed toward me. But, Alabama did lose. And I'm going to not lie. That hurts the 3-team SEC scenario, Mark. But could you just imagine if there was another SEC West team that only had 1 loss? I can't think of any other SEC West team. Oh, wait. Ole Miss only has 1 loss, Mark. So guess what? If they go 12-1, Georgia loses to them in the SEC title game. And with Tennessee being in a 14-point game against Georgia, guess what? It's still possible. The 3-team SEC scenario is still possible.
Why
now,
is
it's
it
not as likely.
With LSU?
Huh?
Why is it not possible with LSU?
Well, I'm not sure if – well, it's possible with LSU, but
I think it's more possible that LSU is going to play in the SEC championship game than Ole Miss is.
I understand that, Mark, but I'm not sure if the playoff committee would put a 2-loss team in there, even if they are SEC champions.
I think they should.
Well, I think what they should do versus what they would do are 2 different things.
If LSU beats Georgia and wins the SEC, they're going to put Georgia in over LSU?
Maybe.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't, but I think they might say Georgia is clearly better than LSU.
Even though they just watched them play.
Remember the Michigan State versus Michigan thing from last year?
Yeah, that wasn't at the end of the year.
Yeah, but still, it was only a few weeks after the game had occurred.
Yeah, this would just be another time when I would just be at odds with the committee.
But you still think it's possible. The 3-team SEC scenario is still possible.
Is it still possible? Yeah, it's possible.
Good.
Yeah.
You know what?
Possible. It would be bad for the sport. It's not good for the sport, and it's not. It's just.
I know people that want representation
really
think it's bad, but I just want to see the best team. So for me,
it's obvious that it's not good for the sport.
But anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today because there was actual games played, Mark, today.
Yep.
You know what struggled today was the color orange. If your team wore the color orange, you probably had a rough day, Mark. Clemson, did they do anything good today?
Not that I saw.
Yeah, they got pushed around, beaten on both lines of scrimmage by Notre Dame, a team that only scored 14 points against Stanford. Is that correct?
Yes. Clemson just guaranteed tonight that there will be even less people watching the ACC championship game than normal.
Yeah, can we say the ACC is effectively eliminated from the playoffs?
Pretty much. I got to think that did it.
Yeah. DJ Uiagalelei, I've been saying for a week or two that I think Notre Dame was going to win. And the reason was because after the Syracuse game, Dabo Swinney said DJ Uiagalelei is going to be the quarterback. And I think if he's struggling with Syracuse level talent, Wake Forest level talent, being competitive in those games, he's going to have a hard time against Notre Dame. So he gets benched. And then Cade Klubnik comes in for a series, throws a pick, and then they go back to DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah.
What did you think about that, Mark?
Well, I think that Dabo's doing whatever he can to try to win a game, and he's throwing psychology out the door in terms of, you know what, my quarterbacks are going to have to be mentally tough enough to do whatever we need them to do, and neither one's performing, so I'm going to have to go back to DJ here. And so that's not the textbook way to manage that situation, but he knows his team better than I do, and he knows his players better than I do. Again, not the textbook answer, and I think that score made it 21-0. So the game was lost. We'll see how he counters that in regards to who the quarterback is going to be going forward. I got to think it's still DJ because he finished with DJ. He said after the Syracuse game, it's DJ, and Klubnik obviously didn't do anything to win the job.
Yeah, now Clemson's got to face a Louisville team that's won 4 straight games. Maybe possible upset alert there for Clemson again. Illinois, what happened to them, Mark? They lost to Sparty.
Well, people have to understand that Illinois has been playing way over their head. You know, I mentioned that a number of times in the last few weeks that we're talking about, from a recruiting standpoint, the worst team in the Big Ten. Nearly the worst team in the Big Ten, the worst tier of recruited players in the Big Ten. Brett Bielema has done an amazing job, but that's basically Illinois football. So we could not expect them to keep this up. So that's Michigan State's a more talented roster than Illinois. Illinois is still probably a better team, but that's a pretty. I don't want to say it's predictable because I didn't think 2 seconds taking Michigan State with the points, but I did take Illinois. But I contemplated the upset. So, again, not surprising. But, yeah, Illinois had a tremendous year, but they're not where they can just show up every week and win.
Can everything you just said apply to the Syracuse-Pitt game?
Yeah. We can apply much of that. And Syracuse also was playing without its starting quarterback. Had I known that Garrett Schrader wasn't playing, which I guess I should know everything that's going on, I would not have picked Syracuse with the points in that game. So I made a mistake there in my picks because I would have taken Pitt with Syracuse playing a backup quarterback. I watched some of that game, actually, and the Syracuse quarterback had no idea where the ball was going.
Okay, and I heard it from basically your last caller and the ranking some people are suggesting in your comment section, Mark. Tennessee, I guess, is just completely trashed now. I would be shocked if they win another football game based on what people are having. Mark, this is going to surprise people. Maybe not because I'm an SEC homer. But I'm not going to punish a team for losing to the number 1 team in the country. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that they are the unanimous number 1 team in the country. Yes. There's nobody else that even has an argument against them?
No.
Okay. They lost to them by 14 at Georgia.
Yeah, it wasn't that close.
I understand that.
Their offensive line got completely overrun that entire game. There was no comparison between those two teams. So they have to take a shot. They won a game at Pitt in overtime, and they lose this game in which they got manhandled. They have to take a hit for that. Yes, they lost to the best team in the country, but they have to take a hit for that.
Yeah, they're going to fall. In my opinion, they should fall all the way down to number 2.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have to see where I'm going to place them, but it might be just by default of other teams not
Ohio State, if they look decent today, I would think
Ohio State or other teams not playing well enough to take that position. But you've got Michigan, you got TCU, you've got Ohio State.
Yeah, Michigan was losing at half to Rutgers.
Yeah, but again, Georgia was losing at halftime to Missouri. And
yeah, but I understand that, but it's a knock against your resume both ways.
Too much of a reaction to what happened today. But yeah, Tennessee's had a great season, and they're one of the clearly 4 or 5 best teams in the country. but they got manhandled today.
Yeah, both things can be true at once. Like you said, they're a great team. They're probably one of the 4 best teams still, but they just lost to a better team.
And they, of course, have to stay ahead of LSU. And LSU, I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one. I took a beating about ranking LSU where I ranked LSU, and I talked all week about how good LSU is and how much they've improved since the Florida State game. And if you're going to give Dan Lanning a pass, being a first-year head coach, first game, first day with his coaching staff, his coordinators, his team, all that at Oregon, taking on Georgia, you got to afford Brian Kelly the same consideration. And look at LSU now, taking a beating on what I've talked about concerning LSU for a few weeks now.
Yeah, Mark, I think you had them underrated today. And I'm very curious what people are saying that they were overrated. Is Alabama just not any good now? I mean, I understand they got 2 losses, but they're still what? At worst, the top 15 team? At absolute worst?
Yeah, they're much better than that. We all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would probably beat Utah, who's probably the best 2-loss team.
Yes.
So,
Alabama's still one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country.
Right. TCU won today, but they struggled mightily, except for the 4th quarter. Mark, TCU's in the same boat Clemson is for me. I want them to lose because if they play in a playoff game, they'll probably get blown out completely. Do you think that's the case?
Yes.
Okay.
But if they win the games and earn the championship, I want them in the playoff. But yeah, I do not see this team competing with the best teams in the country because they can't compete favorably. And everybody struggles on a week at a particular time, like Georgia against Missouri. But TCU does this every week. They're a really good team. They're a fun team. They're a fast team. Max Duggan's got a great story. He's overcome all sorts of adversity. It's a great thing. Sonny Dykes is a tremendous coach. They're one of the 15 best teams in the country.
Yeah, they're a great team and they're a great story. I just think they're kind of like a better version of Illinois or Syracuse where they're punching up above their weight. And eventually they're going to regress back to the mean. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost to both Texas and Baylor.
Yeah, they may.
And speaking of Baylor, that was a game I literally heard nobody talk about all week. Baylor beat Oklahoma by 3 points. So Oklahoma now falls to 5-4, Mark. What do you think about Oklahoma?
Well, I'm going to make my comments brief because we better move along here. I believe that Oklahoma is rebuilding. I believe that they've got certain pieces in certain places, and Brent Venables is working on a tremendous recruiting class right now, but it's not necessarily about this year. And they've actually recovered pretty well from the 3 weeks where they got beat upside the head and looked awful and looked like they may have given up on the season. So at least they're fighting and playing, and they lost that one by 3. All right, DeReal.
Final question, then I'll leave. Who wins first, Miami or Texas A&M? And I'll go.
I have no idea. I'd have to look at the schedules. They're both pretty bad. Uncle Lou's joining us tonight. What's going on, man?
Oh, yeah, I'm just here to spread a little truth around. Now, I'm the biggest SEC homer on the internet. We got to stop this 3 SEC team. Mark, the SEC West is not any good. Do the games matter or not?
The games matter. They better.
What does it matter that LSU lost in week 1 then?
Oh, it matters.
Of course it matters. They shouldn't have been 10 last week. They shouldn't be 5 or 6 now. Alabama's not any good.
Then who's good? How many teams are good?
Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Oregon. That's about it.
Okay, there's about 6 good teams.
Yeah.
But Alabama's not one of them. They're not a good team.
Well, it depends on your definition of good, but y'all are talking about 3 SEC teams and all this kind of stuff. And what if, are you seriously? What if Ole Miss goes 12-1? Come on. Oh, they're more likely to go 9-3.
Sure, they are. We're talking about possibilities. I don't believe that's going to
It's
happen.
not, but that's not possible. That Ole Miss is not winning out. It's not possible.
Well, of course it is possible. You don't believe it's going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen, but it's possible.
Well, 3 SEC teams aren't getting in.
No, I don't believe that.
Okay.
I never believed that, but there was before today a much higher possibility that it could happen.
Right. But like,
right?
How much are we going to continue to devalue the regular season?
Well, if you're talking about you and I, or talking about the fans,
well, here's what I'm talking about.
The committee or the people that matter.
Why is LSU given a complete pass for losing to basically a 500 Florida State team in week 1? But then the playoff rankings come out last Tuesday, and Georgia is given 0 credit for beating Oregon by 46 points in the same week. Why? Why? You tell me, why should Georgia have scheduled that Oregon game? Why? What benefit did it have?
It may have turned out to be a benefit had they lost to Tennessee if they were being compared to Oregon as a Pac-12 champion. But now they're not going to have to worry about it. Well, unless they lose the SEC championship game, there may be a direct comparison the committee's making between an Oregon 12-1 Pac-12 champion and a Georgia SEC championship game loser at 12-1. But I get your point.
Why was Ohio State ranked ahead of Georgia?
I don't know that. I don't have them ranked ahead of Georgia.
Well, the playoff committee said it was because of Missouri. But they didn't mention Oregon. But then when they talk about LSU, they say Florida State was week 1.
Well, I think we both know that regardless of what the rankings are, people can always take shots and question. There are always different angles you can take to tear somebody's rankings apart.
Right. But you can't argue wins and losses. You can't argue what a team's record is.
No.
And I'm not saying that the rankings should be based solely on rankings. There's going to be some subjectivity. But I don't understand how you got no ranked wins for Ohio State. Georgia has a 46-point win over a team that the playoff committee tells me is the 8th best team in the country. But they put Georgia at 3 and Ohio State at 2. Now, it doesn't matter in the long run, but it wouldn't matter if we were talking about 2 teams starting out 7th and 8th instead of 2nd and 3rd. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, if we're on the same page here, Uncle Lou, then you and I care because in those instances, it's going to work itself out. Georgia's got their shot. They've got their path. Ohio State and Michigan, they've got their path. But it calls into question the process and the people that are in charge of making these decisions when it will be a place where they can manipulate something or find a path for someone or make a call that's not the best decision.
Yeah. There's a 0% chance the real MVP watched 1 second of that Georgia-Tennessee game if he's talking about putting Tennessee at 2. He just didn't watch the game. He just looked at the box score.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think you heard my response that the Georgia defense was just overwhelming. They could not block. Tennessee could not block the front 7.
Georgia had as many sacks today as they'd had all year until today. Oh, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but they had 6 or 7 today. They only had 10 for the year.
Yeah.
What about Eric Ainge? What about Eric Ainge saying Sanford Stadium doesn't have any home field advantage? 7 false starts, 3 illegal procedure penalties on Tennessee today. It's hard to explain that away. I don't want to be one of those people that comes on every time Alabama loses and says this, which is why I don't come on every time Alabama loses and say this. We're witnessing the end of Nick Saban. Not this season, but this is not the Alabama that we saw for 15 years. And I'm not even necessarily talking about their record. They're not even a team. They're a bunch of individual parts that don't go together. They haven't figured out the transfer portal or something. The pieces aren't fitting together there. There is no reason they should have lost. They should have 2 losses right now with the talent they have. They commit way too many penalties. They don't know how to travel and play a game anywhere outside of Tuscaloosa. So it's coming to an end here soon for our buddy Nick Saban, I think, which is a shame. Oregon's the best 1-loss team. So what do we think about that?
Oregon is the best 1-loss team. I will take that, even though I believe that there are 2 teams with 2 losses who may be better than Oregon. But as a 1-loss team, sure.
It's either them or Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going to go Oregon, even though the comparison is obviously Tennessee played Georgia better than, but that was forever ago.
Yeah. And Tennessee is a good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just saying that for all the people that are going to be all next week saying that Tennessee wasn't any good and that's the only reason Georgia won. Because I've heard that for 2 months about Oregon. So
we only have 3 weeks left, and Georgia has what? Kentucky, somebody else, and Georgia Tech.
Mississippi State on the road.
Okay. Well, that's not the level of challenge that I thought it might be at the beginning of the year. But at least it's a competent team.
How bad do you think Georgia will beat LSU? 4 touchdowns?
I think that looks similar to the year that they played in the 20.
Is that 05?
Yeah, one of the Richt years was like a 42-10 game.
Yeah.
20. No. That was obviously the Alabama Classic. Can't think of the year off the top of my head. I'm going brain dead. But or like LSU kicked them around with Joe Burrow and that crew. That was in the 34-10 range.
Yeah. Like yeah. Last topic. I know you got other people. The best rivalry right now in all of sports, Ohio State fans versus the weather. Now, is it only windy? I don't understand how this works. Now, if it's windy, that's for both teams?
You've never been to Ohio. It's a tropical paradise, Uncle Lou.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is Ohio State fans always tell me the reason we won't play up there is because, and by we, I mean any team down here, is because we would never be able to win games in cold weather, or we would never be able to win games in the rain or whatever. I mean, it does rain down here, but it seems to me the only team that I know of that can't play in bad weather is Ohio State. They're still blaming how bad did Michigan beat them last year, by 80 or what was it?
Well, it was 15, but it might have been 80.
They're still blaming the weather for that. Now, the weather was just as bad for Michigan in that game as it was for Ohio State. And you know what? And I've had Ohio State ranked 2 or 3 all year. I had them 1 in the preseason. It looks to me right, and I picked them to beat Michigan in the preseason. But it sure looks like it's going to be the same thing as last year. Ohio State trots out 5 boxes of Kleenex and calls it an offensive line. You can't run the ball. How can you not push? Is it too windy to push Northwestern around? And then last year they did this against Nebraska, and I said, I said, how do y'all struggle with Nebraska? And they said, well, Nebraska's the best 3-9 team. And I'm like, come on. So is Northwestern the best 1-8 team? This was bad.
I'm on here talking about it every day.
They can't run the ball.
I know their guards get blown up. It's bad. They can pass. They have recruited and obviously developed offensive linemen that can backpedal and pass protect and build a nice little pocket, but they can't run block. So it's awful.
Yeah,
Three
it seems like it seems like that Michigan-Ohio State game with Blake Corum and the Michigan offensive line is setting up to be a lot like last year.
Northwestern is 109th in the nation in rush defense, but they weren't that today.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be an interesting next few weeks of the season. I'm going to miss all the Tennessee fans that left the internet today. I don't know. Well, they'll be back in the off season like they are every year. All right, Mark, have a good one.
Uncle Lou, thank you. All right, we'll keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got Buckeye Mike showing up to talk some college football. Hello, sir.
Hello. So after the performances today, what do you think that does for the Heisman odds? I know that's a little early still, but
well, the two leading contenders didn't look good today.
No doubt.
Although one of them was playing the best defense in the country, and one of them was playing an awful defense.
Yeah, about that. Let's not factor in the weather because I agree with Uncle Lou. That's a bad excuse.
Yeah.
What do you think I know that the line's not good, the run game's not super good. What do you think really made the outcome the way that it did? And I would also agree with you when you talked to the Michigan fan earlier, that touchdown to make it 21-7 was not garbage time. Does everyone understand in the chat? Garbage time points is when the game is out of hand and your score does not make a difference in the outcome.
Perfect definition. Yeah, so what I took from today's game was, again, and I don't need to keep going on this because it was self-evident to everyone, and I posted a couple videos already today that Ohio State's run game, they've got 5 players playing off the offensive line slots that I believe 4 of them, if not all of them, will play and make money at the next level. They have a tremendous running back in Travion Henderson, who, of course, didn't play today. Mayan Williams may be better. Certainly more of a physical back that you would think would be the type guy that would help out or kind of mitigate that issue of having not enough push or crease, because Mayan Williams makes his own, he hits a dude and he pushes him for 2 yards kind of thing. But yeah, the last 3 weeks, Iowa's rush defense is excellent. However, Michigan ran against them.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will say is Iowa definitely did load up in the box, and they did make that a focus to stop Ohio State's ground game. Penn State has a really good rush defense. However, Michigan ran on them. And then this was the most alarming because, again, the weather had nothing to do with the field wasn't in great condition, but it wasn't slick. It wasn't muddy, and wasn't like it was a monsoon, like people are sliding all over the place.
Right.
People had their footing today. And again, until really late in the game, finally they started to knock open some holes and put some yardage up. Yeah, and I don't think that gets fixed. I think what happens is, I just don't think, if this is what they are through 9 games, that like they're going to fix this in 2 games. I think maybe what they do is some of the things that we saw on that first touchdown drive. CJ Stroud out of nowhere. They called a running play for CJ Stroud, and they called a couple of them, and they were effective. And what I was thinking, Buckeye Mike, was I was thinking, did Ryan Day have this planned all along to bust this out for Michigan? And he's just in a position here where he actually thinks he needs to go to these plays to beat Northwestern? Or did he plan on doing this today to put something on tape that Michigan's got to prepare for now? CJ Stroud keeping the ball and running. he is capable of running. He can put one foot in front of the other and can probably still beat me in a 40-yard dash. So he can gain ground going forward. He's not a runner, but he can gain ground running. So that threat, and then the Abuka run around the end around that they ran for the touchdown, the first touchdown of the game, I'm thinking, are they going to be creating ways to supplement their running game in creative ways?
That's an interesting point. I would note that him just starting to run like that out of the blue reminds me of Dwayne Haskins in 2018 when he went off on Maryland and put us on his back and had a hell of a performance. Rest in peace. But I think it's a good idea in a way for Ryan to start pulling these things out only, 2-3 weeks before the game, because yes, Michigan will know that we are capable of this stuff, but it's almost, in my opinion, it's too close to the game that I don't think Michigan can properly prepare to be able to shut it down. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, again, I believe that they have I believe that they have recruited. I know that the two running backs are capable. I know that the two running backs are good enough to gain yardage on a good defense. Mm-hmm. It's the offensive line, and I don't know that you fix that when it's not been fixed for a year. And I thought the Notre Dame game, the second half was a good indicator in a positive direction. And then everything after that, we see that Wisconsin's still a decent team. So all of that were good indicators. So I don't know what's going on here in the last 3 weeks other than playing better defenses, except for today and getting torched. Now, again, Northwestern had the advantage of, okay, the weather's brutal. They're not throwing. They can't throw. Load the box and blow up the running game.
Right. They kind of just lucked into how they could game plan because of the weather coming in like that. They obviously knew, like, okay, the weather's going to take away their pass, so just load up the box and try to defend the run. So with Clemson out more or less at this point, do you think the Pac-12 with Oregon or SC now gets representation in the playoff this year, other than Big Ten and SEC?
I think that USC has a better opportunity because of its loss being Utah on the road, 2-point conversion, 1-point game. It's just a better loss. And so a USC win over Oregon in the championship game is the best possible outcome for the Pac-12.
And I see in the super chat below us, LSU going to the playoff. Didn't they create the playoff to avoid 2 lost teams getting in, at least for the 4-team format?
Well, we had a situation in 2017 where Auburn was the number 3 team in the country, and they were playing in the SEC championship game with 2 losses, meaning had they won that game, they would have been a 2-loss team in the playoff. So I understand what you're saying, and people are against 2-loss teams, but I'm not understanding the distinction of being a 2-loss team versus a 1-loss team, as opposed to being a 1-loss team versus a 0-loss team. Why is 2 losses the magic barrier?
Right, because in the end, it should matter. The thing that I don't like with the committee is, like, okay, for one comparison, like the Michigan-Clemson comparison, it was, what was it, eye test or something? And then another comparison, it was resume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They throw out whatever works for that scenario. That's what they've got about 5 cards in their back pocket, and they pull out whichever one works for that question.
I mean, personally, you can have a guideline for the way you're going to set up the playoff, but in my opinion, you should follow the same guideline line by line every time. It doesn't, like, personally, I thought in 16 Penn State should have gone because instead of Ohio State, because Penn State won the conference. To me, the conference championship should hold enough over just, oh, your Ohio State's resume was better, so you guys go.
Yes, I agree.
And they left out head to head because Penn State won that year.
Well, so in my eyes, I agree with you, and I'm on record. I got videos posted to the channel saying Penn State should be in the playoff. They got ripped off. I would admit that it was a difficult situation because Penn State had 2 basic points and Ohio State had 2 basic points. So the Penn State points are obvious. We are the Big Ten champion and we beat you head to head. Ohio State had a better record. They only lost 1 game, not 2 games. And they had a better schedule. They went on the road and beat Oklahoma. Penn State played Pitt and lost by 32 points. Well, I'm sorry. I'm mixing up games. They lost to Pitt. They lost to Michigan by 32 points. So Penn State had one of those awful losses that burned Ohio State the next season. So the committee came up with their decision, and that's what it was. But a couple of years before that, it was all about conference championships, and then it suddenly became about resume.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, you can have your different ways of factoring in who is who or who's going to be where, but it needs to be consistent. The committee is horrid at keeping it consistent.
You are right.
Shoot,
Anything
there was one other thing. Well, I can't remember what it was.
Call back sometime. Yeah, we got a number of people. We're going to keep moving here.
No
Thanks
problem.
for calling, Buckeye Mike.
Have a good one.
You too. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. But first of all, we will remind you that tonight's edition of the Voice of College Football, our Week 10 wrap-up show, sponsored by Tailgate.live. We will drop the link in the live chat. Tailgate.live is the home for all things college football. They bring together all major sources of college football news, podcasts, and recruiting. So you go to 247 Sports, you go to ESPN, you go other places like Rivals. Well, now you just need to go to tailgate.live. The link is down below in the description section of all the videos here at the Voice of College Football, tailgate.live. The link is down below in the description section. We will also leave it in the live chat. Let's keep it moving here. We've got Manny on the line.
Hey, how's it going, Mark? Hopefully I don't have an echo.
You don't.
Oh, my God. That's
only
amazing.
Once.
Oh, my God. It's a
only once. Phenomenal.
Wow. This is fantastic. All right. So I guess, since all the kind of craziness of today, I had just a couple of just random questions. Is Clemson done? Do you see them? Is it
not 100% done, but aside from things blowing up all over the place, they're done. Because let's use just a reasonable scenario that has a number of variables that all result in the same thing. TCU's either undefeated or they've got 1 loss. If they're undefeated, they're in the playoff as the conference champion. The Big Ten champion is going to be in. The SEC champion is going to be in. So there's 3. Then there's going to be some kind of comparison between Clemson as an ACC champion and the Pac-12 champion that's going to have 1 loss, or a second SEC team. And this loss that Clemson just suffered tonight is going to be worse than anything that any of those teams are likely to have on their resume.
Agreed. So my other question is, how does Tennessee get into the playoff now? If, LSU wins the SEC championship, or if Georgia wins it, how does Tennessee? What happens to them?
Well, first of all, they don't want LSU to win the SEC championship, because then that's LSU winning the SEC, taking a spot, defeating Georgia, who defeated them, who's taking another spot. So they want Georgia just run the table, Georgia, look even better. So they want Georgia to look as good as possible and win the SEC and knock out the Western Division team.
Yeah, I mean, it went from, Tennessee 2 weeks ago being LSU of 2019 to now maybe not playing in the playoff. That's mind blowing. I feel bad for them, honestly.
You feel bad for them?
Well, in a way, because they were just, like I said, everyone was ready to crown them champions 2 weeks ago, and now they may not even be in the playoff. So
yeah, they may not. It's not looking good for them. But at the same time, the Pac-12 and the ACC could still play themselves out of it. The Pac-12 champion could have 2 losses. We have everyone in the Pac-12 with 1 loss, and we still have to see Oregon play Utah, USC, UCLA, USC plays Notre Dame, the Pac-12 championship game, the Oregon State game. There's still about 5 or 6 games that could pin losses on teams that could go on to win the Pac-12 championship. So the Pac-12 could be out.
Oh, wow. That'd be a shame. I'd like to see Oregon make it. And then what happens if next week Arkansas upsets LSU? Bama goes for the West, right?
The winner of the Bama Ole Miss game will be in control of the West.
Got you. I completely forget about Ole Miss. I don't think I've seen a single game this year.
Yeah, they've only lost 1 game. So
does anyone take them for real? I mean,
I don't believe so. I don't yet. I got to see them beat somebody. They've beaten a couple of decent teams, but I need to see them win a game like we've seen everybody else in the SEC win, meaning Bama, Georgia, and Tennessee.
Yeah. I think right now, obviously if we had to kind of pick the teams it's obviously going to be either Ohio State or Michigan will have a spot. I think Georgia's better than LSU. LSU played really well. It's going to be a good game, but I think Georgia's going to be in the playoff, and then it's the other 2. But my last point, the Pac-12, this is going to sound ridiculous, may be the hardest conference to win.
Okay, I'm not understanding that comment.
Well, we saw Stanford beat Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
So in this, the Pac-12 is so difficult to win because every single game's a trap game. You'll play a team that lost by 40 the week before, that to a team that you beat by 40, and then you'll end up losing to them. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, I mean, like USC right now is playing Cal.
Sure.
And I'm telling you, I would say Cal can beat USC. And Cal has played terrible football. And USC is a good team. But the Pac-12 has a way of having that, it's kind of like when you're in the SEC and you beat Tennessee, and then you have to play what's a bad team? I want to say Vanderbilt, right? But Vanderbilt that makes first downs and starts taking a 17-point lead. I think that happens in the Pac-12 all the time. A Washington State, a Stanford, a Cal. I think it's an incredibly hard conference to win because it's hard to get motivated for the next game. Does that make sense? Because it's the team win and lose by 40
players to know whether it's difficult to get motivated.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're playing Stanford, how bad is Stanford? It's a terrible team.
Yeah.
Yet they beat Notre Dame, who just beat Clemson.
Okay. That didn't have anything to do with the Pac-12 race.
No, but I'm saying when you play in the Pac-12, that's what happens. So you'll be Oregon or you'll be like USC. There's so many times USC, even back in the day, they're playing good football and then they go play some team that's lost by 40 the last 2 weeks and they get beat, right? Two teams that they have beaten. So that's why I find the Pac-12 the most insane conference in college football.
Well, that might be the truth. The final statement that you made, I can go along with that.
I feel like let's say you put someone, let's say it was you put someone in the SEC, a decent team. Let's say you put Tennessee in the Pac-12, right?
Yep.
You would expect them to blitz right through it. But I guarantee you they would be a game where they were just not motivated to play the team because they lost by 40 the week before to a team that they put 50 on, and they get beat. It just happens every year. I think that's why it's so hard for the Pac-12 teams to have a consistent winner. It's just hard to get motivated to play, a 1-4 team. Does that make sense?
I think there's an easier explanation for it.
What do you think?
There hasn't been an elite team in the Pac-12 for about 8 or 9 years. That's why their best teams lose games.
Yeah, but you'll have someone that plays well like a Utah, that is sound defense, sound offense, and then goes and drops a game to some 1-4 like Washington State team, or something like that, on a random, Thursday night when I remember USC would go and lose to Oregon State, and USC had a heck of a team, and Oregon State was like a 5-5 team, 6-5. They'd always drop a game out there. So, and I think it's always happened. It just seems that those teams that are playing well can't get motivated because every week seems like a give me, right?
All right, Manny.
All right.
Anything else you got for us tonight?
That is all.
All right.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you
Mark.
being here.
Take care. Bye.
Okay. I guess I get the vibe. I get the feel of what Manny's trying to explain there, but I think we have all sorts of chaos in different leagues depending on the year. All right. We've got Vandy here. Appreciate the super chat contribution. What are your predicted rankings? Okay. Don't hold me to this because, again, I'm not a committee guy. I don't like the committee. Don't hold anything against them personally. Think that they're all fine, intelligent people, or at least intelligent people. I don't know about their personal ethics. But this is a guessing game in terms of what they would do. And, of course, I'm not thinking about it too long, but I would say Georgia's 1, Ohio State's 2. Then they're going to drop Tennessee to 3. Maybe Michigan goes to 3 and Tennessee 4. And then who do we have? TCU at 5, LSU at 6. Off the top of my head, who am I missing? Something like that. Let's go with that. Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, Tennessee 4, and then TCU 5. There's your probable top 5. Don't hold me to that because, again, it's the committee. Need I say anything more? Hey, Brian, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How you, man?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
I'm gonna start with this. I think it was the real earlier. I don't understand people that make comments on games when they've only watched half the game. Like he referenced the halftime score of Michigan game, right? I mean, shouldn't you evaluate a game when it's over instead of just taking the halftime score? Because if you just take the halftime score of a lot of games, you would say teams are trash. But if you take the whole game, you would say they figured it out and they had a dominant second half and they're a lot better than that first half showed.
I think that some people, Brian, believe that if your name's Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama, that you just walk on the field and then you instantly start hitting for 30 and 40-yard plays, and the other team shouldn't be able to gain a first down, and then it's going to be 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. And if it's not, then there's something wrong. These other
100%.
schools put a lot of money and time and attention and effort in these coaching staffs into preparing these athletes that they've recruited for years and years into developing a game plan to be a difficult team to play. So sometimes it takes drive after drive after drive into the second half to start to break through, even as a more talented team, especially if you're facing a team that has worked out maybe some schemes, some plays that you've never seen on tape. So yeah, we've got games where a Michigan will walk out onto the field against a Rutgers and they'll be up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. And then other times it's just a different matchup and a different day. And it takes time for that talent to show itself.
Yeah, because it kills me. Because I bet you those same people, for example, with Ohio State, they love to reference, oh, they had a 28-point fourth quarter. They have that 6th, 7th gear. But when it comes to Michigan and they do the same thing, no one likes to give them the same credit.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about that. I'm guessing, because I get this from every fan base, that the Michigan fans don't feel like they're fully appreciated, and the Ohio State fans don't feel like they're fully appreciated, and the Georgia fans don't feel it, and on and on and on and on.
True. I feel like that's why I look at the sport. I look at everything. I am a Michigan fan, but I like to analyze all the games. You know, I think that's a true definition of when people use the word homer, is when you're solely got tunnel vision for your team and you're not really evaluating the sport as a whole. And I guess that's where the frustration comes from, because I like to evaluate the sport as a whole. That's my difference there. Anyway, so I guess my next question is, I don't know how you don't put – I think Michigan got a better argument to be number 2 than Ohio State right now.
Well, let's understand, where did the committee – so I wasn't answering how I was going to rank the teams.
True. I understand
that. Answering based on the committee, and the committee had Ohio State at 2 and Michigan at what, 4? 5?
5, actually, yeah. Crazy.
Okay, so the committee, just based on Ohio State winning by 2 touchdowns and Michigan winning in a game, like you said, that was close for about the same length of time that the Ohio State game was, and then they broke it open and won by 4 touchdowns or whatever, 5 touchdowns. That's not going to move the needle.
Okay, I guess
and if it does, then the committee has serious problems if they're taking the number 2 team in the country and the number 5, and they're elevating the number 5 team based on a win against Rutgers.
I guess I agree. Let me rephrase the question. Would you say that Georgia and Michigan are the 2 most complete teams right now?
Yes.
And one thing I noticed is I think Georgia has the best defense in the country.
Yeah.
But I would make the argument Michigan has the 2nd best defense in the country. If you look at all the numbers, the stop rate by the Athletic, which is you know what statistic I'm talking about?
Yes.
They're number 1 there. It's particularly not close. They're top 5, top 3 in pretty much every other statistic. They have the highest statistical categories next to Georgia. But the thing about Georgia, I realize, is they're a classic case of their defense plays up to a ridiculous level when they're going up against an opponent they know they got to play their A+. Well, they've had several games where, their defense lacks, but they're the best defense in the country when they play a team that they know they got to play their best.
Yes, and that's going to be key now because they're going to play an SEC championship game and they're going to play in the playoffs. I think that Iowa's defense may be as good as Michigan's.
That's true. Yeah, imagine if they had an offense, man.
But Michigan's way up there. Way up there.
Oh, 100%. And Ohio, I know the weather thing, but man, can they not run the ball?
Yeah, the weather had nothing to do with that. There is absolutely no excuse for that. This is not an excuse, it's just a football explanation, would be that, and I'd have to go back and watch the game and look at Northwestern's defensive alignment, but because of the wind and the rain, and it became pretty obvious early that Ohio State couldn't throw the ball, that Northwestern might have been loading the box against the run and not playing the Ohio State passing game as honest as they normally would.
See, I would agree with that if it hasn't happened 3 games in a row.
Well, that doesn't mean it didn't happen today. I get your point.
True.
Yeah, Ohio State's run game has been awful now for 3 consecutive games, but that doesn't mean that Northwestern didn't load the box, because Iowa did the same thing.
And I got an interesting scenario. I think Ohio State, because of what happened today, has a very good chance of making the playoff, even with the loss to Michigan versus the other way around.
Well, I've always believed that Michigan is the team that would have a better, well, if you're factoring Notre Dame, that certainly is starting again now to help Ohio State. If Notre Dame now has a dominating win against Clemson, if they go to USC and win that game, then that starts to play in the Buckeyes' favor. But obviously the home road component goes in Michigan's favor of playing Ohio State close in a loss on the road.
Because really, you're a TCU loss away from me seeing 2 Big Ten teams making the playoff. You could really have a 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten playoff right now if certain things fall into place. If TCU loses a game because of how they play, I could see the committee putting either a 1-loss Michigan, if it's a close game, it's like a crazy good game, a 1-loss Michigan, a 1-loss Ohio State, and then a 1-loss Tennessee. Let's say they run through the rest of their schedule, a 1-loss Tennessee, and then a Georgia. What do you think about that?
1-loss Tennessee, 1-loss Georgia,
and then Ohio State, Michigan, Big Ten champ, and then the loser of the Ohio State, Michigan game if it's a close classic. Plus, you would probably need let's say TCU loses a game.
Well, you just gave Georgia a loss. Was that in the SEC championship game?
No. Georgia goes undefeated. Tennessee's the one with the loss because they lost to Georgia today. But let's say Tennessee just blows out their schedule. Those 2 get in, and then let's say let's say Ohio State loses a close one to Michigan. Michigan wins the Big Ten. I could totally see them putting having a 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten Final Four.
Yeah, they
if
could.
TCU loses a game.
They could.
I think it's highly likely.
They could. They should be taking conference champions, but they could. They can do whatever they want.
No, that's true. I just feel like where they put TCU,
that told us more than anything else.
So imagine them having 1 loss. Sure. I don't know. They might put Oregon. I could see them maybe putting Oregon, but it'd be close. It's a lot more likely than we thought before that you're going to have 2 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams in the playoff.
It would help if Ohio State, especially, and Michigan would be dominant the next 2 weeks.
Well, Michigan got a good start today. I know that second half, but I feel like the committee, I get the vibe with some of these games that they do look at that final score, because I feel like the rankings would be different if I know they're supposed to evaluate everything deeply, but with some of the rankings they have, I get the vibe that they don't do that with certain spots as much as they probably should.
Yep. All right, Brian. Appreciate you being here.
All right, no doubt. Have a good one, man.
Call back anytime.
No doubt.
All right, we will keep it working here with Michigan Ben on the line.
Hey, how's it going, Mark? I want to run a scenario by you.
Okay.
Here we go. So, Ole Miss wins out.
Yep.
LSU wins out, winning the championship game against Georgia, who wins out.
That can't happen.
Yeah, LSU already beat Ole Miss.
Oh, you mean that Ole Miss finishes 11?
Finishing 11-1, wins the rest of the runs. Runs
so
the table.
LSU goes to the championship.
So you have Ole Miss as a 1-loss team.
Yep.
You have Tennessee as a 1-loss team.
Yep.
You have Georgia as a 1-loss team, and you have LSU as a SEC championship.
Yeah.
According to what the SEC guys are telling me, that means we have a 4-team SEC championship.
What SEC guys are you talking about?
I'm talking to the ones here on the show.
Oh, Lord. with all due respect,
because they're the best conference, and they're with the one losses, and it's a champion.
With all due respect for everyone who's on the chat, because you guys ultimately pay my paycheck and support me here. I talk to more knuckleheads on social media every day. They come up with the most ridiculous scenarios and stupidity imaginable. So anyway,
I'm being a little facetious.
Well, it's a scenario. It's a scenario. Not all four of those teams are going to be selected. I would guess that Tennessee's automatically gone because they got blown out by Georgia, and that LSU's in because they won the championship, and Georgia would be the next selection because they've been the most dominant team start to finish. But hey, Ole Miss would have a nice little claim themselves. Although
it would be. It would be interesting for the committee to have to choose which teams go and which teams don't.
I have no issue with an SEC fan saying those are the four best teams in the country. They have every right to say that because there's nothing to prove that wrong. Nothing. There's no loss.
I was going with the same note. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
There's no losses by any of those teams outside the conference. Obviously, LSU to Florida State, but they would have redeemed themselves 10 times over by the time they got to the finish line. So again, we play in a sport where we don't have enough results for that to be in any way negated or disproven.
Yeah, no, and that's true. But you could say the same thing for the Big Ten with Michigan and Ohio State.
Yes.
But you weren't arguing that. You were just saying you can make the argument that they're the top four teams in the SEC.
I would love to see. This is what I want to see. I want to see what you just played out, and then I want to see. Well, you're Michigan Ben here, so you want to see Michigan win the game.
No, go ahead.
Ohio State wins the game by 1 point at home.
Well, that would make it better for the scenario if Ohio State wins by 1 point at home.
And I want to see TCU go undefeated. And now we've got 4, 6, 7 teams that all have earned a playoff spot.
And USC has to go run the table the rest of the game. We can't use Oregon because they got beat by Georgia, so they're going to have that sting.
Throw USC in there too.
That would be pandemonium.
Why doesn't Clemson still have?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I know that they wouldn't because they lost in a horrible display tonight. So I get that the style points aren't in their favor, but if they're a conference champion with 1 loss, I believe they should be considered, but there's not enough spots. So yeah, that would be
that would be interesting.
I can't see a way that there's not some controversy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see this is going to, I don't see really this playing out in the way that there's not going to be some controversy at the end either. I mean, I'm not talking about our scenario that we just posed. I'm just talking about the scenario that we are probably more likely to see.
Yeah. So I guess the cleanest scenario possible that's reasonable would be that Clemson loses another game, still wins the ACC, like they lose to South Carolina, or they lose the ACC championship game. Anyway, the ACC just plays itself out completely. TCU's undefeated. They're in. Okay. Georgia wins the SEC championship game, and we still have LSU, Texas A&M. We still have LSU, Arkansas. We still have Ole Miss and Alabama. We still have a lot of potential losses for an Western Division winner. So there could be a situation where it's just pretty much Georgia is the team in the SEC, and Ohio State or Michigan win a blowout, and it's pretty clear cut at that point. The Pac-12 could easily have a 2-loss champion, and that would clear things up considerably.
Yeah. That would be best case scenario. Yeah, no, not at all. I wanted to tell you other than that, I want to tell you I was thinking the same thing watching the everybody else were watching different games, but I was watching that Ohio State game. And I was thinking the same thing at the end of it. I was like, I don't think he was planning on running CJ Stroud like that. I think that was something he was saving for Michigan. And I was thinking the same thing when you said that. I was like, oh, that reminded me when I was thinking that during the game. I was like, I'm wondering if Ryan Day was really wanting to do that.
Yeah, I didn't think that they were in that desperate of a situation, but I guess so. If you're a coach, you're paranoid and you want to ensure the win.
Yeah, I think they needed to put another touchdown on the board, because I do think if they were just a one touchdown win, I think it would have hurt them I think it would have hurt them more in the standings.
Well, you're probably right in these standings, but if they go out and beat Indiana and Maryland 52-14, this game's going to be pushed to the back burner.
Yeah.
If they've separated themselves with 2 4-5 touchdown wins and then beat Michigan and win the Big Ten championship game, then
yeah, I mean, fortunately for both Michigan and Ohio State, they still are very in control of their destiny. So
Ohio State got selected in 2016 as a non-division winner, and the second to the last game of the season, they beat a 3-9 Michigan State team by 1 point, 17-16.
That was what year? That was what year?
2016.
2016. Yeah. Well, I'm still boggled that TCU is not it. I mean, I have no idea what the committee's thinking sometimes. I'm still so boggled that TCU is somehow put as low as they are.
Yeah.
Do you think they make it? That's another thing I want to ask you. Do you think they'll make it to the? You don't wait. You already answered that. You don't think they're going to make it into the top 4? You don't think?
No, I don't think they're going to be in this week's top 4. I don't think they're going to. Based on that performance, I don't think they're going to climb all the way from 7 to 4.
Because Tennessee lost and Alabama was ahead of them, right? The next team ahead of them.
Yeah, Alabama should drop behind them, but I think everybody else and Clemson's going to drop behind them.
And you don't think Tennessee is going to drop behind them?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to drop from 1 all the way to 6, let's say.
We'll see. I mean, everything's neck and neck. I mean, it'll be interesting. Okay, one other thing I wanted to say before I let you go. They were talking about the first Michigan fan. He was talking about Michigan, and they didn't look good on the field at the the beginning of that game. And they didn't if you're watching the game, they didn't look great. JJ wasn't throwing very accurate, and they had some hiccups. But as far as the total yardage, if you would have looked at they even brought up a graphic. They said if you would look at this, showing the graphics of the yardage, you wouldn't think Michigan's in a close game going in the half. And I don't think Michigan looked as bad as we as fans like to, because everybody's I think the expectation was set that we go in there and demolish Rutgers, but Rutgers had a punt block and scoop and score, and they were able to make some nice plays down the field, similar to what Michigan State did by throwing contested balls to a receiver, and their receiver ended up with the ball. And they did that several times, and it just didn't continue the rest of the game because eventually those get intercepted. So I know you didn't watch the game. So
I didn't watch the game. I think it's pretty easy to see and know that Michigan's a far better team than Rutgers, but Rutgers gave them a game in the first half, and it was 17-14 at one point. They led, and they had some, I don't think blocking a punt's flukish. You've got a game plan for that, and you make it happen, and it's a football play like any other football play.
No, it was a good play.
You can score depending on how that came to be. There are scoop and scores that are complete.
No, it's a scoop and score off the block punt.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know?
I thought they had another defensive touchdown.
No, that was a scoop and score off the block punt. But I mean, you got to at some point give Rutgers had a good game plan.
Exactly.
But I mean, the same thing can be said about Ohio State. A lot of people are talking about that game, and I mean, and this is the thing too. I mean, I don't think that the weather should be like completely dismissed. I think that's a big part of what makes Ohio State great is the way they throw the ball down the field, and that's when you cut that out. That's a huge, that's a huge part of Ohio State's game.
Yes, it is.
So at the same time, football is played in all sorts of weather, but I still at the same time, if you're going to look at playing Ohio State in a clear day, you're not going to be playing the same Ohio State that they play that played today. It's going to be a different Ohio State. But anyways, Mark, I know you got a lot of people get on, and I'll let you get to that.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. All right. Again, we want to remind everyone that tonight's show, our big Week 10 wrap-up here at the Voice of College Football, is brought to you by Tailgate.live. And the fine folks there at Tailgate.live is your new home for all things college football. They bring together all the major sources of college football news, podcasting, and recruiting. No need to go to 247 Sports, ESPN, wherever you go. There's a number of those sites all aggregated right there at tailgate.live, rivals included. The link is down below in the description section, and I've left it in the live chat as well. All right, let's get moving here. We've got all sorts of folks we need to get to. Sean's on the line. Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, how's it going tonight? It's
I'm
a late
good.
one. It's a late one. But you know what? We get to gain an hour, so that's going to help out.
Oh, that's
morning,
right. Absolutely.
There you go. So, I wanted to first thank you for liking one of my tweets today about Ryan Day and not being able to play call in the rain and in the weather. I mean, one thing I thought was really interesting about the game was how stubborn we were trying to actually throw the football when it was just obvious. Even when Stroud was hitting the guys right in the gut, right in the breadbasket, they couldn't hold on to the football because the weather just wasn't for it. And so I don't know. I was pretty ticked about that just watching the game. And it's like, just run the ball 3 straight times. I didn't especially in the first quarter when we were going against the wind. I thought there is just no way. Why are we using a down in order to try? I just didn't understand using a down and wasting a down basically in order to prove a point that we can't pass. They should have figured that out in the warm-ups. And then go ahead. Do you have anything?
Well, basically, there are different objectives during a football game, and some are long-term objectives, and others are just the simple objective. First and foremost is obviously to win the game. So you need to do what you need to do to win the game. But there are other objectives, depending on the opponent, to work on some things. So maybe that was Ryan Day. Number one, if you notice, they couldn't run the ball.
Yeah.
Number two, that maybe he thought, you know what? There are teams that can throw the ball in weather. Now, most quarterbacks will tell you, I guess the 2 biggest factors I've ever heard out of any prolific quarterback who has talked about weather challenges, they talk about wind, they talk about rain because the ball's wet. So there was a little bit of both. There was mostly wind. And obviously they didn't throw the ball well in the wind. However, there are quarterbacks that throw the ball okay in the wind. Maybe Ryan Day was saying, you know what, we're going to have to toughen up. We're going to have to throw the ball possibly in the wind. So let's see if my players can adjust and adapt.
Yeah, I thought we were lucky. I thought we were lucky because, like, a lot of times, especially when you figure it out early, you can't throw the ball. that just leads right to turnovers. And we're just really lucky we didn't have any turnovers in this game that cost us.
I don't know if that was lucky. I think they took care of the ball.
Okay.
I didn't see them get. Now, if your point would have been that there were 3 deflected passes that Northwestern dropped that could have been interceptions, or that Ohio State fumbled 3 times but recovered their own fumbles, then I would say, you know what? Yeah, they were lucky. But I didn't see that.
Well, there was a couple of balls where the wind actually pushed it over the receiver's head. And that's where I could see there being issues. So if you have, like, if the ball gets underthrown because of the wind, then all of a sudden it opens it up for the defenders. That's where I'm thinking about it, because that happened several times, like where he was throwing it, the ball didn't land anywhere near where he was throwing the football. So
Sure.
that was kind of my thoughts behind that. But also too, on running the ball, what's interesting with Ohio State is that in the beginning of the season, and really up until Iowa, they were able to run the football. I went to the Michigan State game and they ran the ball all over Michigan State.
Yeah.
And so I think what happened was, I think Iowa figured something out with our line. And then also I've heard that Matt Jones is working through an injury. But if the injury is this bad where he's performing terrible, he's, I think, our right guard. If he's performing this terrible, then they just need to pull him and put in the backup, because they have to get a little bit more push. The one other thing, though, I will say is that our running backs juke way too much, and they just need to hit the holes. I don't understand why. And this is with Mayan Williams. I think personally, I like him better than Travion, but he always goes to the right side. Whenever he makes a move, it's always going to the right side. So if I'm playing him as a defense, I would kind of have that in mind. Like, he's always going to go to the right side. So just push him out of bounds. And that happened a couple of times today where they knew he was going to cut it outside, and they just let him take it outside, but he didn't get hardly any yards because they just followed him out of bounds. So that's one thing about the running game. Also, too, we've had a really weird year with injuries. Oh my gosh, it seems like our running backs, none of them are healthy, and then they're scared to use the young guys. So it's just been a really interesting year as far as injuries. Maybe that's the difference. And if we get to the playoffs, they'll be healthy and we'll be able to run the football on the inside, because they were able to do it in the beginning of the year. So my other points today was the Notre Dame win is a huge win for the Big Ten. Today, for Notre Dame going in and blowing out basically North Carolina, they blew out Syracuse, and blowing out Clemson completely collapses the ACC. So if you have a one-loss, let's say you have a close loss Michigan or a close loss Ohio State, and let's say Michigan loses by 3 points, let's say Ohio State loses by 3 points, you can hang your hat on the fact that we played Ohio State closer than Notre Dame did. And Notre Dame beat all these teams. And then if Notre Dame goes in and beats USC, then definitely you can hang your hat on, on this translating win, because they have to compare the teams in some way, and that would be the comparison. And then
so I'm not real clear on who you're comparing.
Okay, I just think either Michigan or Ohio State. It doesn't matter as long as it's close. As long as it's a close game. That Notre Dame win early in the season for Ohio State will help both either Ohio State or Michigan.
Well, if we're going to use that theory, and I understand it, you're right. They're making those comparisons all the time, and Notre Dame's looking better. They're playing better. And if you're making that comparison between Ohio State and Michigan versus, let's say, Clemson as a one-loss ACC champion, is that what you're doing?
Yes, sir.
Well, there's all sorts of different ways I could take the same comparison, though. Did you notice who beat Alabama tonight?
LSU.
Who beat LSU?
Tennessee, Florida State.
Florida State. And so Clemson beat Florida State. And the ACC has a lot better non-conference wins than the Big Ten. Like, I agree with you that the Notre Dame playing better and notching some decent wins.
Yeah, it's kind of the common thing though, where it's connecting. It's kind of like weaving this whole. It's almost like weaving this whole. What would you call it? Like the clothing of this year together, though. So it's kind of like the missing link, so to speak. And personally, I don't think TCU is going to go undefeated. I think they're going to lose, maybe even next week. So I really do think it's going to be a two-team SEC and a two-team Big Ten if the Big Ten's close. If not, I'm not really sure who that fourth team's going to be, but it's going to be exciting, that's for sure. And one other thing is that I remember calling you a couple weeks ago and kind of complaining about where Bama was ranked, because I know Bama. I know they're a good team, but they just haven't this year. They're just not deserving of being being ranked very high. I mean, they should have lost a couple of games. They have lost a couple of games now. I mean, if they had a different name next to them, if they had Penn State's name next to them, they wouldn't be ranked as high as where they are at. I think that they should. I don't think they should be a top 10 team. I think Penn State should be ranked ahead of them. I mean, Penn State's lost to two teams that they should have lost against, but they've beaten everybody else. And I can't say, like today, they went ahead and they killed Indiana.
Sure.
You look at Texas A&M.
Because Alabama had a game where somebody ran for over 400 yards and blew them completely off the field like Michigan did. Bama's lost two excruciatingly difficult, close games in two hostile, difficult environments. They lost tonight in overtime, 32-31, and they lost to Tennessee on a last-second field goal after their kicker missed a long field goal, 52-49.
No, I understand. I just think
didn't lose like Penn State lost.
Okay. Well, maybe there's just not that many good teams.
By Ohio State, and they got laid to waste by Michigan pretty much the entire game.
I realize that, but I actually think there might even be another loss down the road for Alabama. It just feels like to me.
Okay, I'm not going to rate and evaluate teams on what might happen.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Penn State did not play good against Michigan. I understand that, and they didn't play. I mean, they played okay against Ohio State.
Yeah, they did for most of the game. And then they got whipped in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah,
they got completely just blown away in the last 10 minutes. But yeah, they played really well for 50 minutes of game time. All right, Sean, any other points?
Well, I just want to know, where do you think Alabama should be ranked?
Where should Alabama be ranked? I can't completely answer that question unless I sit down, because I don't just haphazardly throw rankings around like most people do. But I'll give you a gauge. I think they should be ranked around 10.
Okay.
Somewhere like
I'm
that.
just curious.
11, 12. See, here's the difficulty in rank. Well, there's a zillion difficulties in rankings, but here's one. If you are where was Penn State ranked a couple weeks ago when they played Ohio State? Let's say they were 14 or something like that. If you're the 14th best team in the country and you're playing the second best team in the country, shouldn't you pretty much have the result that Penn State had against Ohio State? Like, sometimes we drop teams just because they lose. Like, if you're the number 15 team in the country and you played a really strong game against the number 3 team in the country and lose, wouldn't that
here's a question.
Would be expected of the number 15 team in the country to do against the number 3 team in the country?
Yes. So here's a good question then. So if you think because Penn State lost to Michigan by a big score, then should LSU though? Should they be? I mean, look at LSU; they got destroyed by Tennessee. So Tennessee, LSU,
LSU played Tennessee closer than Penn State played Michigan. If you watched the game.
Okay, but I mean, how much? I mean, you know what I mean? Like they did. It wasn't close. It wasn't close.
Yards of rushing.
It wasn't close though. That's my point.
No, it wasn't close.
Yeah. So I mean, who knows if Penn State gave up or not? But I'm just saying, like I guess you could do the kind of the same thing as you were saying before, where we can kind of say, well, Florida State beat LSU, thus or this and that. But I just think that I just think Bama lost to a team that lost to Tennessee by 4 touchdowns or whatever the score was. It was a big score.
But Bama actually played Tennessee. That's the difference. We don't need to make some kind of comparison between Bama and Tennessee with some other third party. Bama played Tennessee.
No, I understand that. But similar, like Penn State played Ohio State. It was a pretty close game.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that necessarily Alabama should be ranked below Penn State, but they should be in the same ballpark. That's what I'm saying this year.
Absolutely. All right, man.
Well, thank you, sir.
Sure. All right. We better keep moving because people keep trying to join the stream and they can't. Hunter, how you doing tonight? Hello, Hunter. Hunter, are you there? Going once, going twice. Hunter, are you with us? I think you've muted your mic for some reason. All right, we will keep going. Let's bring Sean in. Sean, how you doing tonight?
Fantastic. How are you?
Mark? Well. What's going on?
Was there anything interesting that happened today in the world of college football?
I was intrigued by the Syracuse-Pitt game. That was a really good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Riveting stuff there.
Yep.
We did have a 77-63 game as well.
I missed that.
SMU Houston. Obviously no overtimes, but
work that one up here.
77-63 was had that on one of the NFL. It was being played on the NFL network. I didn't know they played college.
Yeah, I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. They had a Coastal Carolina Marshall game on, I believe it was, and I thought, I'm all for as many college football games as people want to put on. But number one, I'm thinking, who's looking for a college football game on the NFL network? Number one. Number two, aren't they pissing off their fan base who wants to see, the day before the NFL plays, analysis of the NFL? And number three, unless you root for Coastal Carolina or Marshall, how many people are watching that game? You get all these other games.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's fine. They make their decisions and they obviously have reasons.
Absolutely. I've been kind of annoyed by some of the calls talking about like playing out some of these scenarios. Certainly in regards to the Big Ten, because I think it's about as crystal clear. They're going to get one team in, assuming there's like not a major upset somewhere, and it's going to be whoever wins that Michigan-Ohio State game. They're not going to get two teams in. Neither one of them have a strong enough resume. I mean, the schedules for neither one of them are going to merit getting in as a non-champion. I can't imagine that. And the Notre Dame win, I mean, it's basically irrelevant. I mean, it's going to come down to whoever wins that game, and that's about that's as simple as it gets. Is there?
Most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just wondering, is the Brian Kelly slander ever going to stop? I mean, I really think this guy, he's one of the 3 or 4 best coaches in college football. I believe this for like a decade now.
Yeah.
And I very rarely hear anybody, any of the fan community ever say anything positive about him.
Well, I think a few things are working against him. And I also ranked him fourth. I think I had him fourth. I'd have to pull up my rankings from the off season, but I ranked him fourth. I think he's a tremendous coach. And of course, he lost his first game to Florida State. And we had all sorts of people on here saying, see, Brian Kelly sucks. And people just go overboard based on one result. It's crazy. And that's why we got to put this week's play in perspective versus the rest of the season. Okay, Brian Kelly, there's a few things working against him. Number one, if something goes on social media and it goes viral, it can wipe out a lot of facts and logic. And him trying to talk like a Southerner, like he's from the Bayou, obviously people are going to go off on that. Number two, the guy was never that well liked by anybody outside of the Notre Dame fan base anyway. Now, I don't have any feelings one way or the other toward the guy in regards to rooting for him or rooting against him, thinking he's a great guy or a bad guy. He's pretty neutral. I'm not in one of those camps one way or the other, but there's a lot of people out there that dislike Brian Kelly.
He has a very strong personality.
Raving on the sideline,
yes,
yelling at people, and they don't like that. But it's funny because when coaches don't do that, they don't think they care enough or they're not fervent enough. And then the other thing is he's lost big games.
Yeah, he's lost big games. He's gotten teams that shouldn't be in big games to big games, and then they don't quite, they don't match up to the absolute elite.
They typically had to play the best team in the country.
Yeah. I mean, not many teams have good. I saw a line this week or something. He's said it was supposed to be like an own of Brian Kelly or something. They said he is he's 4-13 in his last 17 games against top 10 teams.
Yep.
Everybody's going to have bad records when you're comparing them against.
Well, that's a great point that you make right there, because there are a few people that don't, when I say they don't lose to anyone, they basically don't lose to anyone. We pretty much had 3 coaches in this sport in the last 15 years that win those games, and their names are Dabo Swinney, Urban Meyer, and Nick Saban. And if you're not one of those 3 guys, then I don't care if you're Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly or Jim Harbaugh or James Franklin or Mark Richt, or go on and have had a lot of success, or Mac Brown, you're losing those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think what he's done this year is one of his most impressive coaching jobs.
Yeah,
especially considering it's his first year. The organization at LSU was in complete tatters. It was a complete disarray. So dysfunctional when he came in. And I mean, he has them, on the cusp of possibly an SEC championship appearance. And I think they've got a much better shot against Georgia. I mean, they've got losable games before then, so you shouldn't put the cart before the horse. Exactly. But assuming they get to the title game, I think that's a much more formidable matchup than some people, a couple callers have insinuated that that's just going to be a bloodbath. I don't think it could be, but I don't necessarily think that that's inevitable.
Yeah, we had one caller who threw out like a 42-10 kind of score, and I wasn't going to argue or anything. I don't know. I could see Georgia winning convincingly, but I could also see LSU hanging in the game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Georgia, Tennessee. Boy, they really know how to show up in the big game, in the big moments, don't they? I mean, for as much as it's interesting. For as much as we nitpick over teams not being impressive against mid-level competition or using that as points of evidence against these powerful teams, it doesn't really matter at all. in a way. Like if as long as you win the games and as long as you're showing like you demonstrate some level of eliteness in some areas of the game, like all that really matters and matters is how you perform in the big moments. And teams get exposed or they.
Yeah, we've arrived at a point in the season where no team in America has been dominant against every opponent on its schedule. Even Georgia struggled against the likes of Kent State and Missouri, of course. So everybody has had bad weeks, off weeks.
Yeah. And somebody's going to end up winning the national championship still, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Tennessee, are they reasonably in control of their own destiny? I mean, I say reasonably as in assuming Georgia kind of runs the table here. Do you think they're in Tennessee runs the table, finishes 11-1? They'll have 2 really, really good wins against, Bama and LSU. They'll have had the toughest crossovers that you could possibly have.
Yeah.
And
well, it would have helped them considerably had they played close today.
Yeah. But I mean, if they have one loss and it's to the number 1 team in the country, and I don't know, you just assume, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to guess what the committee's thinking. And the committee doesn't even know what it's thinking because there are 13 different people that you can bet that if we could hear from all 13, they're all over the place. And that's a good thing. They should think differently, but you can go one end of the spectrum. Some of them are just metrics people, and they're going to look at the numbers and crunch the numbers, and the strength of schedule is going to tell them, and they're going to go by yards per play and all this other stuff. And then you're just going to have football-oriented people that are going to say, I just watch these teams play, and I can tell you who the best teams are. And you're going to have some that are somewhere in the middle that weigh both of those things. I got to say that I would think that Tennessee's rooting for Oregon to win the Pac-12.
Tennessee's rooting for Oregon to win the Pac-12?
Yeah.
I don't exactly follow that.
That's a direct comparison to a team that got annihilated by somebody on their schedule.
See, I would think they would want to have as many 2-loss conference champions.
Yeah, sure. Well, we can draw up all sorts of scenarios. The Big Ten West can win the Big Ten, and that'll knock them out. That'll knock out the entire conference, and North Carolina can win the ACC, and that'll knock out that conference. And we can do Texas can beat TCU in the Big 12 championship game, and we can knock that conference out. There can be all sorts of scenarios we can play out. I'm talking about reasonable comparisons.
Yeah. I mean, the ACC is going to have a hard time getting anybody in right now. The Big 12, very reasonable to see TCU losing twice the rest of the way. They have I think they're more likely than not to have a 2-loss conference champion. So that knocks 2 of the 5 out right away, and then if Oregon stumbles, if you have a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, pretty hard for me to see Tennessee, an 11-1 Tennessee with a loss on the road to the number 1 team, not getting in that scenario.
Yep. I get your thought. All right, Sean. Appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. We will try Hunter again. Hunter, you with us? Hunter, hello. All right. Next up, we got Bash on the line. Bash, what's going on tonight?
Howdy. What a day. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay. I got 3 topics to talk about.
Okay.
Ohio State, Northwestern.
Yeah.
Of course, Tennessee and Georgia. And then, of course, the Heisman watch. So which one do you want to start with?
Let's run through them.
All right. So as far as Ohio State goes, everybody's wondering about the run game. Like, why isn't the run game going? And Zach Smith, I know you're familiar with him, but Zach Smith in Minnesota
He's been on
sports.
here about 20 times.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, he has. He's been on here
Absolutely.
several times, so I know you're familiar with him. But with that being said, he always brings up how much he hates stretch run and how much stretch run is just ineffective. And what stretch run is essentially trying to basically work sideline to sideline to try to create gaps, kind of shifting, into more space, right? And Ohio State and Ryan Day is obsessed with stretch run, and it just doesn't work. Now, whether or not stretch run can work, we've seen it in the past work with Ohio State. We saw it work very well with Trey Sermon, right? These guards are a liability when it comes to trying to do that. It's just the guards. Luke Whippler, the center, is playing well. Both tackles are playing well. Matthew Jones and Don Jackson. Jackson, probably youth. And then Matt Jones is just, I don't know if he's dealing with an injury like a couple of callers said. He's just not good right now. And he hasn't been good for the last 3 games. So, I mean, is it something that can be fixed? I think it can be. I don't think it's like a doomsday thing for Ohio State. But I will say this, and this is where Ohio State needs to be able to level up and become a championship team. Purdue, Maryland played in similar conditions today, and they both struggled. Both are passing teams. They rely on passing the ball, and they both struggled to move the ball and score. Hey, Ohio State fans, do you want to be Maryland? Do you want to be Purdue? Because that's what the offense is becoming. A more talented version of that. So anybody trying to use the weather as a major excuse, it's a factor. It's a reason why Ohio State didn't blow them out. I even told them before the game. I told my buddies before the game, I said, Ohio State is going to win 21-0. It was 21-7.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not surprised by what happened. It's just a shame that I was able to see that happening before it even started.
Yeah, it's a good point. I threw out a score like that. Unfortunately, I didn't carry it through because we were talking about weather on our Ohio State show on Wednesday, and I said something like that too. I said like 20-3, and then I unfortunately didn't stick with my own thoughts about that, and I actually forgot about the weather when I made my pick. But anyway, against the points, no, those are really good points about the offensive line, and yeah, it's guard play primarily. The stretch play, I got to say, I'm not a huge fan of it myself. I don't know as much as Zach Smith does about it. Do they run that many stretch plays?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's most of what their run game is. There's less of it than last year because of Justin Fry coming in.
Yeah.
And you could see it in today's game. I'm not saying this is the case in every single game, but like when Ohio State wasn't running stretch and they were trying to run downhill, basically it's the difference from going east to west or north to south. And when they were blocking north to south, they got a push. They just didn't get a push when they were trying to create those gaps on the edge. But when they tried to just run up the middle, they were able to get a push, get a consistent 4 or 5 yards. Like that last touchdown Mayan Williams had, beautiful. I mean, I know that's like goal line situation, but perfectly blocked. So they run it a lot, and it's not, in my opinion, it can work. It's just you have to have the right personnel and very athletic guards to do it. Ohio State doesn't have that.
Well, hopefully they see that and they diagnose that, because I think your running game, first and foremost, should be formed to the strength of the offensive line and not the running backs. The running backs should be able to adjust.
And this is the last thing I want to say about this, but as somebody who just kind of like sits back and watches offense, the thing I love most about offenses is when they're able to be versatile. And not just versatile as in, okay, they can pass on this down, they can run on this out. No. How are they doing it? Can they have success in the short pass game? Can they run screens, be able to turn a 2-yard catch or catch behind the line of scrimmage into like 10 yards? Can they go ahead and consistently hit intermediate passes? And can they hit the deep ball? Same thing with the run game. Can they run up the middle? Can they run off the edge? Can they mix it up a little bit? And I don't see the multiplicity that in the Ohio State run game that I would like to personally see. But I'm also not nearly as qualified as Ryan Day and this offensive staff. This is just a fan take. That's what I see. And I hope it gets fixed nonetheless.
Yeah, it's got to get fixed to some degree.
Right.
Besides that, we rarely see teams become something different or fix this egregious of an issue 9 games in and fix it against the best team on their schedule. That rarely happens.
It's
Actually,
rare.
I would have to go to the NFL for the best example of that. The year that Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl with the Colts, they had one of the worst defenses in the league, and they went to the NFL playoffs, and they turned into like the best defense in the league. I don't know why, but they did.
I was little, but I'm a Bears fan too, so definitely educated on that.
They certainly nobody could move the ball against them. Yeah. I think they got some players healthy. But anyway, yeah, the running game, and that's why I pointed out before we move on to the next subject, I posted a video, and basically, obviously, the dynamic of CJ Stroud getting some called running plays was very interesting. And I had two theories on why we saw that.
I heard that too earlier. I didn't check out the video yet because I've been glued to the TV.
Sure, of course. And then the second one would be that on that first touchdown with Emeka Egbuka, that being another compliment to the running game, that if they can't generate the kind of yardage that they want from a traditional running set, that they're going to look for other options to create yards on the ground.
Yeah. And also I just want to transition to Tennessee because I don't want to take too much of your time. I've given my thoughts, but I'm going to put this out there. I saw this coming. I said that a couple of weeks ago after the Alabama game, in the aftermath, I'm like, this is great. I knew you'd have a chance. I picked Alabama to win that game, but I knew that Alabama might lose that game, and they were susceptible. But then the Tennessee hype train to me went off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to that Alabama game is Tennessee was able to expose mismatches that Georgia doesn't possess in the secondary. Georgia did not possess those mismatches on DeMarco Hellams and Terrion Arnold that Alabama had. And I knew that going in, and I made a TikTok about it that went off for, 65,000 views, which is big for me. But I mean, I got criticized for saying that Georgia was going to win by 3 scores, and it really should have been that. I said, this game's not going to be close. Georgia's going to basically, they don't match up well with Georgia. And to me, Tennessee is a one-trick pony in the way they win. If you take away the downfield passing game, I don't think Tennessee can beat anybody. They can run the ball, sure, but without that threat of the deep pass, their running game is not nearly as effective. And Georgia took that away, and they dominated as a result.
Well, good call. I thought it was interesting. We posted a segment with our betting guy, Steve Merrill from Wager Talk, and he said this was the most bet-heavy big game this season for one team. And, yeah, all the people are enamored with points. They're enamored with offense. They don't – like if – we hear that, we see this all the time. If a team wins 42-40 and they're one of the best teams in the country, hardly anyone mentions that their defense looked like crap. But if a team wins 10-7, then suddenly what's wrong with them? We're not looking at both sides of the ball. So the betting public was enamored with Tennessee. The sharp money was with Georgia. Steve's model was Georgia was going to win by 13 points. And there you go. I picked Georgia to win. Now, I did pick Tennessee to get a backdoor cover, so I missed that. But thought Georgia would win fairly comfortably.
Yeah, and my biggest thing, too, is like a lot of people kept pointing out Nolan Smith, and there was such a big deal about Nolan Smith being out. Yep. And look, the thing people don't recognize with Georgia is I've actually watched Georgia a decent bit. They get pressure on the quarterback. They just haven't been able to get home, get the sacks. And today they got the sacks. Now, what flipped? Maybe it's the big game. Maybe it's Tennessee didn't really focus on trying to get the ball out as quick as some other teams. I don't know what happened there that changed that, so what was it, like 6 sacks, I think it was? Yeah. I can't remember what it was exactly. But, I mean, to that point, I had been saying that, okay, Nolan Smith is an edge rusher, linebacker type. I picked Georgia on the basis that I trust their secondary and I trust their depth at secondary. And that interception, by the way, by Keely Rango, that was a beautiful play. If anybody had any doubt that that kid's a first-round talent as a DB, that just silenced it there. So that's all I got for that game. Real quick, Heisman. Why is nobody putting Blake Corum and Drake May really in that conversation?
Because people like to focus on the national championship race, and Drake May's not part of it. And then they just assume that he's playing awful defenses. But yeah, he's a tremendous player and should be in that conversation, especially now that the two leading candidates had bad days, and one of them against a bad defense. And Blake Corum should be in the Heisman race. I think he is in the Heisman race. I don't keep up with Heisman, whatever talks out there about the Heisman race. So I don't know who's necessarily in the Heisman race or not in the Heisman race. I would have voted before today for Hendon Hooker, and that's been my opinion for weeks and weeks and weeks. After today, I'd reevaluate that.
Yeah, I also kind of saw that coming too. I have very much noticed that Hendon Hooker is very inconsistent on covered deep balls. He can hit those deep balls where somebody is, wide open because he's got a lot more room for error. But when he doesn't have that room for error, he can't make those plays. I still think CJ Stroud is in the thick of it because I do think his stats were 100% affected by the weather. I mean, you could say whatever. I didn't make an excuse for Ohio State struggling against Northwestern. I will give an excuse for not being able to throw the ball.
Well, Hendon Hooker's statistics today were affected by him laying on his back.
That too, yeah. But I mean, you saw it though. Every single time he took a deep shot, the most accurate pass when it came to deep balls, 20 plus yards, the most accurate pass was the one that was actually picked off by Keely Rango. And that's only because Rango made an amazing play. That wasn't even Hooker's fault. You just got to give credit to the kid for playing great defense. But he was probably something like 1 for 6, 1 for 7 on deep balls today. And he's been inconsistent. And I've worried about that all year about Hendon Hooker. And I've never bought the Heisman hype with him. I basically have been saying Blake Corum for weeks now. And I'm really on Drake May. I think he's the best quarterback in America. He's the only reason North Carolina is not like 3-6 right now. He's the only reason. They're 8-1 without Drake May. They're 3-6.
All right, Bash. Good to hear from you, man.
Time. Yeah, for
Thanks.
sure.
Appreciate it. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Dave's on the line. Dave, what's going on?
La-di-da-di-da. I'm the M-I-N-E-S-O-T-A. La-di-da-di-da. I'm the D-A-V-E. How's it going, Mark?
That's a way too much spelling for me, but I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
It sounds like you're feeling good. Looks like it.
I'm happy that my Gophers beat Nebraska today.
Yeah, they did. Had to come back. Sure.
Yeah. Question for you. Did you watch the game?
So I always have 3 games on, and that was one of my noon games. I can't say that I really took it in terms of studying the game, watching it from that standpoint. I was keeping track of it.
Did you watch the end when we had a first down, basically, and they reviewed it and they said we were short, even though it was quite obvious we had the first down? That would have pretty much sealed the deal.
Yeah, I did not see that sequence.
Yeah.
Did they review it?
Yeah, they reviewed it, and we took a timeout, and all of a sudden they're saying, well, we're reviewing the play. Okay. What are you reviewing? Because it's quite obvious he got the first down. And the only thing they said we were basically a half a yard short on the review. And I'm like, how are you a half an hour short? It's clear his body doesn't touch until the ball is at the first down marker or past the first down marker.
Dave, why are you concerned with this now?
Oh, I just wanted to see if you saw it.
Okay, I didn't see it. Your team won the game. It didn't cost your team.
Yeah,
I can understand you being pissed off in the moment, but it didn't cost your team.
I'm a Minnesota fan. I always look for excuses.
Okay, well, you're 6-3 now. That's good.
Yeah, bowl eligible.
Yep.
But we've been talking a lot today about, Ohio State and the Alabama game.
Yep.
I felt we should give a little love for Michigan State pulling off the upset today against Illinois, which makes the Big Ten West race very interesting now.
It does, because Illinois has to play at Michigan and they play Purdue. Yep.
And a little love for Kansas. I don't know the last time they beat a ranked team.
I saw the statistic on that. It was like 2008. It's been 45 consecutive games that they've lost to a ranked team.
All right. That was the year that they went to the Orange Bowl, didn't they?
That was in 2007. Yeah, with Todd Reesing at quarterback. They won the Orange Bowl. Yeah.
And what else are we going to talk about? I did watch probably the best game of the day. It was the Bama LSU game.
Yep.
And I would have to say, the one thing I would have to ask you is, why is every time someone plays a weak schedule,
yeah,
especially non-conference schedule,
like
that
Minnesota
Bama does not get crap for it? Where Michigan plays a weak schedule, they'll get crap for it. When Minnesota plays a weak non-conference schedule, they'll get crap for it.
Did either Michigan or Minnesota play Texas?
No.
Okay.
But we're talking about non-conference.
Yes, that is a non-conference game for Alabama.
That is a non-conference game for Alabama? Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh.
It won't be in about 3 years, but it's a non-conference game and always has been. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Alabama always schedules one difficult opponent.
Okay. Good for them.
They usually don't travel
really
to play them, but
a bunch of softies.
well, they do. Their other three are always really pathetic, but they do schedule one difficult game.
And the Gophers get to play them in a probably what was it, 8 years now down the line?
Nice.
Yeah, they got scheduled, I think, for 2031 and 2032, or
love it.
2032, 2033, somewhere around there, like a home away.
Okay.
So I will be able to watch Bama play the Gophers.
Yeah.
And I'm actually thinking about going to Bama when they play Bama at
that would
Bama,
be cool.
because that would be a very I will say something about Southern football fans. Their hospitality is so great. Especially if they know they can beat you.
Yeah.
As a visiting fan.
If you're no threat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe things will change by then. You may remember that your team beat Alabama in the Music City Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it'll come back around like that.
And I think Nick Saban wasn't even close to being the coach at that time.
Well, that was that was Glenn Mason, obviously. That was like what, 03, 04 in that range, 05.
Yeah. That was I remember that game. They were just starting to actually build up their program, and they fired their coach.
With the two great running backs. Was that the Barber and Russell team?
No, Barber and Maroney.
Lawrence Maroney.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think it was Maroney that ended up passing away this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, I think he had a stroke and passed away.
Wow. He's probably barely 40.
Yeah.
Not even.
Well, probably 39 at the time.
Yeah.
Well, if I come to think about it, he would have to be like 39, 40 years old when he passed away. Unfortunately, he had a decent career with he had a decent career with the what was it, the New England Patriots.
Yes.
And Barber played for the Texans, or no,
The
Dallas.
Cowboys.
Played for the Cowboys, not
Yep.
Texas.
Well, Dave, we got a lot of people lined up here. Is there anything else you want to hit us up with?
Well, Mark, nothing else. Just you guys have a good weekend. Everyone else have a good weekend, and go Gophers.
We appreciate you checking in with us. Who do the Gophers play next week?
Northwestern.
All right. They should get a win there. They should.
And then the actual rivalry games start, which will be Iowa and Wisconsin. I'm going to Wisconsin the last game.
Sweet. Good stuff. All right, man.
All right. Have a nice night.
You too. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate DeAndre, BGPO Football Funk, with a couple super chats. Hey, Mark, what is the link? But DeAndre, I see that you got it. So you're up in one more call. And so let's go to Connor here, who unfortunately suffered an excruciatingly difficult loss last night in Seattle. Connor, how you doing tonight? Hello, Connor. Connor, hello, hello. Can people let Connor know that we attempted to talk to him? Let's try this. He's got Connor, you recognize you got different links here.
Yeah, something weird happened. It kicked me out of one. Good. Okay.
Well, we're sorry about your game last night.
Yeah, I am too. It came down to Smith getting out coached. And I actually have a fun theory because I think it happened to y'all too. And I looked where it was played. It was on the lake at Northwestern.
Yeah.
What was the winds there? What were the wind mile per hours?
I don't know, but it was obvious it was affecting the throws considerably.
As it did last night. And it had me thinking, I think it gives do you play golf?
I don't.
Okay, I don't think it matters. I think you'll still get it, but for those who do
got
play
a lot
golf,
of friends who do.
Yeah, so I think Penix had an advantage playing right there on the lake. You know, he probably practices there every day. If you're throwing into the wind, obviously you have to take or put some more on the ball. If you're throwing with the wind, you have to take some off. And I think practicing there helps immensely.
Plus, there's no question that he has a considerably stronger arm than Gulbranson.
That was going to be my next point. It just cut like knife through butter. Yeah. And I think too, if you coach there and if you are the quarterback there, I think you pick your spots. For example, you switch ends each quarter. If you're going with the wind, you could take more deep shots and you can put more under the ball and let the receiver go get it, especially if you have speed on the outside. So I would say we were the better team for the first half because we were able to run the ball. And then they made the adjustment of putting more guys in the box. And Gulbranson, he missed two passes that were wide open touchdowns.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to blame it on the wind, just like you don't want to blame it on the wind. But I think that's an interesting point that, both of them being on the lake there, Northwestern, and then in Seattle, Chicago and Seattle, it definitely plays a factor. And so if you're the home team, it's just another advantage of being the home team is kind of the gist of that.
Yeah, the one big difference would be that Ohio State is considerably the better team. It's not even close to Northwestern, as opposed to what we saw last night, where we could have all sorts of arguments over who the better team is. I thought Oregon State looked like the better team for most of the game.
Yeah, it was. You don't see Jonathan Smith getting out-coached too much. The only time this year, we went for it twice on 4th and short. I think because we didn't want to kick field goals because of the wind, but also that's just Smith's MO. But earlier in the year, the only time he's been out-coached so far this year, I think he out-coached Riley even, just the players didn't outplay, would be Utah, would be Whittingham. And the week after that one, he's given up full reins to Brian Lindgren, the OC. And after that game, he made a point in his press conference to say, "Hey, I'm going to sit down with the OC and Hinson, who's the wide receiver coach and also the pass game play caller." He sat him down and he checked him, and I think he's going to do that again after this week because well-coached teams, I think, can make up for a large gap in talent. You see that with the Beavers being 3 stars. You see that with TCU. You see that when a good coach comes in and immediately flips a program around that already had good talent. So I'm still hopeful. We will win the next 2, Cal and ASU. I'm kind of watching those games on right now. They're both playing to kind of scout them. And maybe we'll be ranked again before the Oregon game to play spoiler. Would you say – I was thinking about it. And the caller earlier tried to vouch for the Pac-12. I think I could do a better job. My main question would be, which conference going forward is the most exciting conference race to watch? And I would say that's easily the Pac-12. You could argue the SEC, including the conference game, those 2 conferences, which is why I think maybe the Pac-12 this year at least is probably the second best conference. Also because you could look at the top 6 are all worthy of being top 25 teams. Now that Washington beat us, I think they slide right into the top 25. Wazoo, you could probably slot them top 30. But I think it's last year and the years before when you were kind of knocking the Pac-12 because they were the 5th worst, I kind of have to now do the same to maybe say that the Big Ten is either the 4th or 5th conference right now.
Okay.
Outside of the top 2, we know. Even the 3. I guess my question for you is,
we know the top 2
in the Big Ten?
Oh, the top 2 in the okay.
Sorry,
I thought you meant the top 2 conferences. Okay,
and probably the top 3. So my question for you is, who's the 4th best team in the Big Ten right now?
Well, based on the rest of the season, Illinois, but they lost today.
Wisconsin beat Maryland today.
I would be able to answer that question much better because we're going to see Iowa, Minnesota. There is a pack of teams in the Big Ten that are extremely close.
Yeah.
Purdue, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue, even Illinois. I just think Illinois has been well coached and they've been on a run. They are one of the least talented teams in the Big Ten. So I wasn't surprised by what happened today. So I think we've got like everything from about 4 to 10 in the Big Ten is extremely close.
That's a good point. I now want to say that maybe we could make an argument you're the 3rd best conference. I still think the Pac-12, because if you outside of the top 2, you're like kind of like a Big 12, and then the ACC is obviously the worst this year. It's just so maybe the Pac-12 doesn't have the elite 1 or 2, but I don't know if Ohio State or Michigan are elite right now. They're undefeated, sure.
What are your points against the ACC?
I've done my least research with the ACC, but Clemson was the favorite. And, Cal should have beaten Notre Dame. Stanford did beat Notre Dame. Those are the 2 of the 3 worst teams in the Pac-12. So if Clemson can't score once on Notre Dame, if that's their best team and it's by far their best team, then maybe they're a lot like the Big 12 too.
Well, the conference has beaten LSU, UCF.
I like Florida State.
And the conference has played pretty well outside the conference.
So maybe it's just SEC 1, Pac-12 2, and then the rest is up for debate. I'm making the argument that I think the Pac-12, because it is maybe you can – do you think it's the second most have to watch conference for the rest of the year going forward?
Yes, as a whole. The Big Ten's 1 game. The ACC does it matter? And the Pac-12 is obviously there are 4 teams that are going to play that one weekend that's going to be great, and that's going to funnel into the championship game.
Well, you said Oregon So I would like to. You also have not said UCLA yet. If they beat USC and win the Pac-12 championship, they're a one-loss team with their only loss being to Oregon. That could still go to the. So the winner of USC UCLA could still certainly go to the playoff.
Yeah, and in a sense, UCLA would have at least the argument that they defeated the team that beat them. They had a rematch and they won.
Well, here's the thing with Oregon, though. Their next 3 games are Washington, Utah, Oregon State. So that's why I think that the UCLA USC winner has a better chance of getting to the one loss. We'll play the games. I just think that's why it's so exciting going forward. All of these games in front of us in the Pac-12. I don't know who Wazoo has left on their schedule, but they could surprise. I mean, they'll play Washington at the end of the year, but there's still going to be a lot of shakeup in the Pac-12, which I think personally, maybe I conflate the two, most wanting to watch, but also being the second best conference, because I would still want to watch the SEC games first most. Those 2 games on today were so good. Well, Georgia just watching them is just impressive. It wasn't a good game, but they are just violently. I was trying to find an example for intensity meter. That guy said the other day, Georgia's intensity meter. They're just so fast, so violent. It's funny because Stetson Bennett, I don't think is that good, but he's playing on the best team, and so his swagger has taken him to a new level. His confidence is unreal. So I don't think anybody right now could beat Georgia, but that's not as fun to talk about. So how about I'll try to go quick. There's so many people waiting. I would say I'll call him BK for now because I'm not talking about him a lot. Brian Kelly today solidified that he has maybe always been a top 5 current active coach. Just now he has an SEC roster. And then my other thing with Brian Kelly is, and I know a lot of people don't like him. He's smart. Do you think he consciously or subconsciously shapes the narrative? Because he certainly knows how to shape narrative, whether it's on the field yelling at refs, trying to get a call later on in the game, whether it's in front of the media. He's doing all this, like it or not, that certainly contributes to the team's success and his own success as a coach, I think.
Well, he certainly is smart enough of an individual to know how his actions are perceived.
And I think that's why he talked in the Southern accent. Like maybe he's, how like autistic people are really smart, but maybe they don't know how to like read a room, or they think they're doing the right thing. And I don't want to call him autistic. Nothing against the neurologically impaired community. But you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, there are certainly tons of people that are more intelligent than I am, but they may not be as aware of how they're perceived or how they need to present themselves. Yeah.
And if it is a spectrum, I hate using that word, but like if it's a spectrum of like smartness versus awareness versus how much of it is narcissism, I don't know, but I think I would still go Saban, Kirby, Dabo, Lincoln Riley, and then probably Brian Kelly 5th.
I ranked him 4th in the offseason.
Who did you? So then you ranked Riley 5th or somebody else 5th?
I went Saban, Dabo, Kirby, Kelly, and I forget after that, but I didn't have Lincoln Riley. I had him 11th.
Oh, yeah. I guess I probably didn't look at enough. I just think the turnaround, and USC has the talent, so it's not like it's the craziest thing in the world. And the amount of times he's coached in the playoffs is still something to speak for. Let's see what else I have here. So I think now going forward, maybe we can have a scenario where you just take the 4 best conferences and you just take the conference champs, and it's right there. Which leads me to think maybe there's a way, and I know you hate bye weeks, but like there should be a 5th team, and maybe we just stop at 5, and the clear best conference winner gets a bye, and then you have 2 versus 5, and then the other conferences you rank them. That's the CFP committee's new job, is to rank the CFP or rank the conferences 2 through 5 and put the winners in those positions.
I don't trust them to do that.
But you see my point. It's just because I think that we're just finding that we're just more and more reasoning that the Power 5 is the Power 5 for a reason, and it's been this way for a while. to have 4 teams. I guess 8, you're still going to get the top 5, and then have some others in. So I still like 8, but this year
there is 2.5 minutes left in the Coliseum, and Cal has just scored a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, and it's 41-35 with 2.5 minutes left to play. So,
wow,
Cal has made this a game against USC, and this is what I question about USC. They play some pretty bad teams close.
Are you calling us bad?
No, I'm calling Cal. I'm calling Arizona.
Yeah. No, but to your point, like, I don't know.
Stanford.
They shouldn't have played us based off of talent-wise as close as.
And meanwhile, Arizona State's doing the same. They've been getting killed by UCLA, and they just scored a touchdown, 2-point conversion. They got within 6 with about 5 or 6 minutes left.
That was 35-10 last time I looked.
Yeah, it's 42-36.
That's Oregon State's next 2 opponents are Cal
crazy stuff going on in the Pac-12.
And that's our next 2 opponents.
All right, Connor.
I'm trying to give you my funnest ones. I was thinking about it. Okay, so first off, shout out Cadillac Williams. I think he's the right guy. First black coach for Auburn, pretty cool. I remember him as the running back there, and he was just fired up. Auburn Mississippi State played a good game in overtime today too. But final point, I was worried about as far as conferences going, the Big 12. But if you look at bringing in BYU, they're going to be able to recruit the West. In a few years, the Big 12 will be good. Florida, I think, can support 4 teams with recruits. Texas, I don't know about 5 with Houston, and then Ohio. So maybe part of the reason Ohio State's been so good is because they get all of the Ohio kids. But now that Cincinnati coming in, I don't know if that's going to affect Ohio State's recruiting going forward.
I doubt it.
But if you're an Ohio kid and you want to play Power 5 conference, maybe you're a 4-star, not a 5-star. Maybe you can go start at Cincinnati versus. I think it improves Cincinnati some.
If you look at so Ohio is still a strong football playing state, but it's not nearly as strong as it used to be. It was like a top 5 state, let's say 25 years ago. Now it's more like a top 7 or 8 state. And that's a significant drop. It's almost like recruiting rankings. And Ohio State doesn't bother with anyone past like the 8th or 9th best player in the state.
Yeah. Wow. So then on the same topic, I can close it out with the Pac-12. Well, we're going to go down to 10. I think San Diego State is the clear choice to fill the Southern California gap. But then I was thinking about it. Nevada doesn't have a Power 5 team, and the Las Vegas area is going to blow up with people moving there. And the football's been pretty good, so why not add – I mean, I know we're talking UNLV for Vegas and the market, but like Nevada, between those 2 schools, I think one of those is maybe going to be the 12th team, just so that they can fill the rosters.
Well, I posted a video on that, and I threw UNLV into the ring based on location and nothing else. But if you look at their school, and of course the Pac-12 is concerned about academic institutions, it doesn't really stand with the rest of them, for one thing.
Tony absolutely shut me down when I tried to say Gonzaga for the Pac-12 the other day, for basketball only.
And I don't know if it's going to be that attractive for people in that area to go see Nevada, Las Vegas play Arizona State in a football game.
They play. Sorry for interrupting. They play in Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play, and the Vegas fans have showed out for both the hockey team and now the football team. So I don't know if there's room for a third team. But for me personally, I just love college way more than pros. So I think if they're in a Power 5, if they're in the Pac-12, that gives all the Pac-12 fans a reason to fly to Vegas once a year too.
True.
So that's all I have. I know you have a lot in the how many does it hold, the StreamYard? I was just curious.
Something like 12.
Somebody said 10. I thought maybe I didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Something like that. And it shows me when other people are trying to get in. Right, Connor. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, of course.
Sure. All right. Want to remind everyone that tonight's edition of the Voice of College Football and our Week 10 wrap-up show is sponsored by Tailgate.live. Tailgate.live is the home for all things college football. They bring together all the major sources of college football news, podcasts, and recruiting. That would be locations like 247 Sports, Rivals, ESPN, and others. So just go to tailgate.live. You will see it on the banner that we've displayed for most of the show. Tailgate.live. The link is also in the description section of the videos. All right. Got Michael on the line to talk some college football tonight.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. What's going on?
How much I'm trying to figure out 2 weeks to prepare for Iowa. And
Yes.
I'm still trying to figure out how I wasted 3 hours of my life this afternoon.
Yeah, it was an ugly game. It was a poor effort and an ugly game. And when I say a poor effort, I don't mean that the guys weren't trying, but it was a poor game plan. And I got to say, though, that the Iowa front seven, especially the defensive line, was just dominant in that game. And Aiden O'Connell, I wasn't locked in on that game all the time, but I watched quite a bit of it, and he didn't have enough time to throw most of the time.
Yeah, plus with wind and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I was thinking when they had the first play of the game when Maccabee ran for 15 yards, I think it was. I'm thinking, okay, Purdue's gonna run the ball today. And what burned me is, first and goal at the 2-yard line. Why did Purdue throw 3 straight times? I will never figure it out.
I don't know.
And then I'm thinking, okay, pretty much Purdue still has a slim shot. And then what happens about 3.5 hours later in Champaign, Illinois? Probably the shocker of the day. It was Michigan State and Illinois.
Yeah. Didn't shock me, but I get your point. You're right.
So next week's game, you're going to have 2 angry teams. The question is, who's going to be the more angrier team?
Yeah. Where's that game played?
Champaign.
Okay.
And then after that, Illinois got to go to Ann Arbor. But I'm like, I was talking with mine with people after game and stuff like that, and they was telling me that Phil Parker had that game circled on his calendar since last year. He wanted to personally deliver what Purdue did to Iowa last year to Purdue today, and I got to give him credit. That's what he did.
Well, you've got to think, because Purdue's had his number and has been the only team that's been effective year to year against that Iowa defense.
Mm-hmm. I learned that and stuff like that. It looked like we got two pretty good games coming down to the wire. USC still got the ball, or are they getting ready to kick away?
USC, they just got a first down. They just got a big run, so I don't know what the timeout
And they're out,
situation
and Cal's
is.
out of timeout, so they can pretty much just take 3
Yeah.
knees and the game's over.
Well, there's 2 minutes and 11 seconds left, so have to do
Yeah.
the math there. I think they're going to have to punt. They're
They're on Cal's side of the field.
Well, they're going to be able to run it
down.
down to like after this play to about 130, then to about 50 seconds, and then on third down they can get it down to about 20 seconds and kick a field goal or figure out whatever they want to do.
Yeah, it looks like they just basically, if they get one more first down,
Well,
it's
there it
open.
is. They almost got it right there.
Yep, not
So-
bad. But no, I gotta give but the thing I'm trying to figure out is, even with the Iowa fans I was talking to, where did this come from with Iowa the last 2 weeks?
Oh, with the offense?
Yeah.
Well, last week they played Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
And they still made strides and improved. So to their credit, this week against the Purdue defense, I don't know. I guess they are improving. Spencer Petras told us that a few weeks ago, and nobody believed him, including me.
Yeah.
But they've shown to have a capable offense for 2 consecutive games. How about that?
Yeah, and I'm not an Ohio State fan, as you know, and stuff like that. But and I was just talking with some in the chat and stuff like that. But is there cause for concern with the offensive line when it comes to the running game for Ohio State?
Absolutely.
But I don't understand with this one particular person, how come they can't figure it out and stuff like that? I don't know. But it is what it is, though. But I'm telling you this, though. Michigan, to me, is probably the most complete team in the Big Ten right now.
Sure, they are.
And it seems like they just keep getting better as the game goes on and stuff like that. They might not be, but in the third quarter, it's just when they just pretty much put it onto the pretty much put it to floor. I mean, your other foot to the throat, and pretty much decided like that. In the third quarter tonight, I think they scored 28 points in the third quarter tonight against Rutgers.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Point well taken. Yeah, they were challenged for almost a half, and then they did what they were supposed to do against Rutgers. Yep.
Okay. And how impressed was you with LSU tonight?
Extremely impressed. But I've been telling people on here for a few weeks that didn't believe me that LSU is really good.
Yeah, not bad. All right, Mark, I know you got a ton of callers coming behind yourself. I just want to throw my 2 cents. Oh, and yeah, Purdue should be the 130th ranked team after this last couple of weeks and stuff. Anyway, have a great night, man.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to Nick here, I'm looking at the Big Ten Western Division standings. So Illinois is 4-2, and then we've got 4 teams tied at 3-3, and Illinois has defeated 2 of them, Minnesota and Wisconsin. So they still have a leg up in the loss column, and then the tiebreaker on 2 of those teams. However, at the same time, they go to Michigan, I believe, next week. So there you go. Nick, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I'm good.
Just that's good. Just had a couple quick questions. Wanted to run down first of all. This is throwing a wrench in my couple questions, but did you say what LSU did was extremely impressive?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because they played one of the best teams in the country and they won the game. I can't think of too many other games that are more impressive, too many opponents that name me 5 or 6 games that are more impressive in terms of the opponent than the game tonight.
Well, I can't do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked me that.
Yeah, so I'm not saying it. Alabama's obviously not infallible, and there are similarities to what LSU did tonight to what Tennessee did against Alabama. They had a huge home field advantage. They carried the momentum of the crowd, and there was a lot of emotion, and they had all of that working for them.
But just X's and O's. X's and O's.
Sure, X's and O's.
I mean, are you not you probably really...
The point I was going to make is that I'm not saying we can't take that win away from LSU, just like we can't take that win away from Tennessee, but we also have to understand the circumstances and understand that it would be far more difficult for those teams to beat Alabama if they were playing them in a neutral site in Dallas or somewhere.
Okay, so what's your opinion on Brian Kelly so far?
I think he has taken some time. It's not like he came out of the gate with his team exactly the way he wanted it. They had some special teams errors their opening game. Jaden Daniels had to carry the entire offense because they had running backs who were hurt and suspended. So they basically had no running backs their first game. So Jaden Daniels had to be the running game as well. And they have slowly been able to get their pieces back into play. Jaden Daniels is a much more comfortable and capable quarterback today than he was the first game of the season, playing with new teammates and a new program in a new location and all of that. So he has obviously taken to the coaching and the camaraderie with his teammates and the reps that he's got in the system to become a much better player today than he was 9 weeks ago.
Do you think LSU is a top 10 team?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that said, could you run through top 10 based off your initial reaction? This is
like, who are the 10 best teams in the country, or who am I going to rank in the top 10 based on their resumes?
Top 10 best teams.
The 10 best teams in the country in no particular order. I'll try to give you an order as best
No,
I
no,
can.
give me an order. 10 best teams
Okay.
in an order.
Again, this is a rough order because I like to be precise on these things and give it some thought. But anyway, George is the
And
best.
that's why I said like now. Like right now it's an initial reaction.
Sure.
That's just what I want right now.
George is the best team in the country. Michigan's second.
No.
Ohio State's third. Yeah, I think
You only got through 3?
well, the issue is that some of these teams, again, you have to understand the dynamic of matchups, and that everyone likes to say once a definitive, like they're the best, they're the second best, they're the third
It's not
best.
about everybody, Mark. It's subjective. I asked you, like, what are your top 10 teams?
Absolutely. Hang on and let me explain. So people want definitive, and that's obviously part of the deal.
Not
And you
about
gotta,
people. It's not. I'm sorry, it's not. I'm asking you and your opinion.
and I am making an explanation. If you would be quiet for a second and let me finish before I rank these teams, to let you know that the way people usually take any type of rankings is they think that there is like this definitive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. When there needs to be an understanding that 8 can beat 3, and 12 can beat 7, and also that all the spots aren't created equal. There isn't a exact difference or gap between each spot. It's okay. That said, Georgia is the best team in the country. Then I would say that Michigan right now looks like the second best team in the country. And I would say that I would go Ohio State 3, Alabama 4, Tennessee 5. Am I forgetting anyone? Oregon 6. Then I would say, did I throw LSU in yet? I should have put them in maybe at 6. And Oregon 7, TCU 8. And the last two in the top 10 would be probably Clemson and Penn State.
And this is completely separate of what anybody else like that. This is you and me. Like that. So this is your top 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Which I wasn't trying to be rude or interrupt you before, but that explanation kind of was about other people, not about what I asked you. But okay. So can you relist your top 5 for me?
It was Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. Then did I go Alabama, LSU? Did I miss something in there?
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes sense. That's all I was kind of curious about. I really don't understand I guess my question is, what, based off your ranking, you think Michigan and Ohio State are much more closely related than the playoff committee?
Well, yeah, going into last week or this weekend's play, the committee is telling us that the Ohio State's the second best team in the country and Michigan's the 5th best team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Michigan's playing better than Ohio State.
Even though Michigan was losing in the first half against a terrible Rutgers team.
I do think that Rutgers team has been more capable than the Northwestern team that Ohio State played, and Ohio State's issues are recurring. I'm not going to overreact to one game necessarily.
Okay, that's fair. Anyway, I'll let you get to your other callers. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Have a good night. All right, let's see. We've had a couple of callers waiting that I've tried a few times. We got DeAndre on the line. DeAndre, you there yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. How's it going tonight?
Man, I've been in Maryland for the last couple of days to celebrate my cousin's
Yeah.
wedding. So,
And you
been
became a
kind of,
Terps fan.
huh?
And you became a Terps fan.
Oh no, never.
Okay.
I think I was there for the 1983 game between Clemson and Maryland at Baltimore Stadium.
Okay.
On Boomer Esiason.
Oh, Memorial Stadium?
Yes.
Where the Orioles played and the Colts? Nice.
Yeah. So, a couple things about the Clemson loss. When I watched Northwestern and Ohio State played earlier today, I was like, Dad, that wind is kind of terrible. And I was talking to Craven and them. I didn't have a chance to really watch the game and then talk to Craven and them, but we'll text back and forth. And I tried to explain to them, I think it's the wind that affected Clemson. Don't get me wrong. Notre Dame had an excellent game plan, but this goes back to on offense. Clemson's defense having trouble with 6 offensive linemen and multiple tight ends. When we go back to Florida State, Boston College, Syracuse didn't do it so much. They didn't get to run back the ball at all versus Syracuse. Syracuse only ran Tucker like I think 5 times. But I think my issue is why hasn't the new defensive coordinator been able to adjust 2 teams playing 5 or 6, just ram blocking or whatever they be doing to affect Clemson's defensive ends? Because everybody knows Clemson's strength is their defensive line. And they run like 8 or 10, but the defensive ends are being blocked, and the tackle and the guard are double teaming the defensive tackles, and then the guard is coming along and blocking them. So sometimes I think this guy, I don't know his background, but I don't think he's ever really been a coordinator. So I think he's being out coached in a way. Another block kick, I didn't get a chance to see it. Block punt. But Clemson had the ball when it was 7-0, and they had a chance to kick the field goal. I think Dabo went for it. I don't understand. Maybe the wind was too strong. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to really watch the game. But why not go ahead and kick the field goal if I'm Dabo Sweetie? Kick the field goal, make the game 7-3. I still give your team some confidence going to that thing. Dabo's a great coach, and he did a great job building Clemson. I lived through the 90s and 2000s, and that was a terrible time before Dabo. And I wouldn't trade Dabo for the world, but I think sometimes his loyalty to coaches trying to kills our team. And I think that that guy that's the defensive coordinator, I think it's Wes. I think that's really hurting us because I don't think that he's a good defensive coordinator, and I know he's come highly recommended, but just still not able to adjust to what teams are doing is a problem to me. And I know we don't like talking about the past, what does one thing have to do with another, but I'm going to show you something that does relate. If we go back to Alabama, when Clemson played on the first time Clemson beat them, I can't remember who the run back, it might have been Henry. You go back to when Ohio State beat Clemson a couple of years ago, and you go back to Notre Dame, maybe, I think it was in the playoffs. They were all ran the ball on the right hand side, their left tackle side, and they all went for touchdowns. I just don't understand why Clemson can't adjust to that play. And if you go look at today, I think that happened a few times where the running back got loose going on the left hand side. And it doesn't matter who the defensive end is, they have always done that to Clemson. And I don't know why they haven't been able to adjust over the years to that particular play. So, But there's a silver lining in this. Dabo got their attention. And the reason why I say Dabo has their attention, you got Louisville, and I think Louisville's playing much better.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Miami, who's not doing so good right now, and you got South Carolina. Then you get Carolina, who doesn't run the same type of running game that these other teams run. So Clemson got a chance to finish the season strong with 4 wins and win the ACC championship. And like Dabo said, his goal going into the year is not always to win the national championship. It's to win the non-conference games and win the conference, the Atlantic Division, then win the conference, conference, and beat South Carolina. So we in a row with those goals. So I don't really think it's as bad as people think it is. As fans, we'd like to make the national championship, and you just never know because USC still have to play Notre Dame, and right now Notre Dame looks pretty good on offense. The way they're running the ball, and we just seen that USC had a issue with Cal. I was watching the game. I said, I wonder if Mark watching this game.
Yeah, I was keeping track of it. I wasn't watching it really.
And what year was it that Auburn beat Alabama? How much did they beat them by luck? The year that Alabama and Georgia both lost to Auburn. Remember that year?
Are you talking about 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could have a scenario like that where Clemson just gets back and can't get back in there because a lot of these teams still got to play each other. I think Texas got to play TCU. The TCU could will lose in the championship game. There's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts about it, but the main thing Clemson needs to do is take care of Clemson and try to finish.
Yes.
Yeah.
The worst thing about that loss, though, was that it was convincing. If Clemson would have lost by a field goal,
right,
just the evaluation is going to hurt them.
Yeah, that's true. But let me ask you this, Mark. I meant to ask you about the other day, and I'm not going to keep you long. At the end of the year, Florida State, Louisville, Clemson probably be favored to win their SEC end of the year games, correct? They're pretty good games.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Louisville, that could be a bit of a toss-up. I don't know where they're playing the game, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So let's say that those teams win out, and Clemson's done beat 2 of those teams. Florida State has had a pretty good year. Who else has had a good year? NC State and Syracuse. Everybody knows NC State lost their quarterback. I know they beat Wake Forest today. And they might get Carolina, who might possibly be 11-1. So wouldn't Clemson's strength of schedule look a lot better going down towards the end of the year?
If people are being fair, yes. I don't think that the ACC is as bad as all these people think they are. Just like a caller about 3 or 4 calls ago that said the ACC is definitely the worst and was trying to figure out the rest of the conferences, but didn't even think about the ACC because they're the worst. And I said, you know what? If you look at the wins that the ACC has posted outside the conference, there have been some embarrassing bad losses too, but still, it's difficult for the other conferences to come up with wins against LSU, Texas Tech, Central Florida. Pitt taking Tennessee to overtime, beating West Virginia.
Right. And NC State beating Texas Tech, who's beating.
Yeah, I threw that out there.
Yeah. Yep. But and I'm gonna let you go, but yeah, that's what I was saying. It's like sometimes people forget, like this just the narrative. Oh, the ACC sucks, and you really don't go back and look at like Florida State that's beat. And don't get me wrong, I know it was the beginning of the year and new coaching staff, but Florida State did beat LSU in Baton Rouge, and Clemson did beat FSU at home. So, all of that stuff, how you write it up. I mean, I think, again, I know you say, well, what does the past got to do with it? Miami got shut out by Florida 1 year and went on to win the national championship. Was it with 31-3 or something like that? Bernie Cole. I'm not saying that has anything to do with it, but we have seen teams get destroyed and then come back to win the national championship. So that's why I say there's a correlation in that. But I'm not gonna hold you up long, and you have a great night, Mark. Sorry I couldn't get up there long with Craven and them. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah, but I got you. Hopefully I'll get back to normal next week.
Sounds good, DeAndre. Appreciate you being here. Thanks, man. I'm adding up the ACC at 5-7 against their Power 5 opponents. Clemson lost to Notre Dame. Syracuse beat Purdue. NC State beat Texas Tech. Florida State beat LSU. Louisville hasn't played anyone yet. Wake beat Vandy. BC lost to Rutgers. UNC has not played a Power 5. No. They lost to Notre Dame, so they might be 5-8. Duke lost to Kansas. Beat Northwestern, though. I missed that one. 6-8. I'm just looking at the teams and running through the scores off the top of my head, so I may miss something. Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech lost to Ole Miss. So I'm going to do this for myself. I know this might annoy a few people, but we'll take a call in 2 seconds here. So let me run through this again. Clemson lost to Notre Dame, 0-1. Syracuse beat Purdue. That's 1-1. NC State beat Texas Tech. That's 2-1. Florida State beat LSU. That's 3-1. Louisville has not played anybody in the Power 5 yet. That's 3-1. Wake beat Vandy. That's 4-1. BC lost to Rutgers. That's 4-2. North Carolina lost to Notre Dame. That's 4-3. Duke beat Northwestern, but they lost to Kansas. That's 5-4. Georgia Tech lost to Ole Miss. That's 5-5. Pitt beat West Virginia, lost to Tennessee. That's 6-6. Miami lost to Texas A&M. That's 6-7. Virginia Tech lost to West Virginia. That's 6-8. And Virginia lost to Illinois. That's 6-9. 6-9 against Power 5. All right, we got RT Moore. What's going on tonight?
Oh, hey, Mark. This is just call me Mooley. I've been on this a few times. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I wrote a bunch of questions. I'm only going to ask a couple, but I know you talked about a bunch of topics already. So if there's anything that you already talked about, then you can just say, I already talked about it. I'll go watch it back. But
no, that's okay.
No, because I do want to. I'm sure you've talked about it, but also like the LSU-BAMA game, because obviously when BAMA loses or struggles, it's always going to come down to which side of the ball was worse and stuff, and obviously the coordinators. A lot of people or some people be saying fire Pete Golding or fire Bill O'Brien and stuff. Just wondering, what do you think in terms of just basics on like how Alabama's performance is, because I personally think defensively they actually played a solid game. I think Ricks did get burned a bunch, but like like Kool-Aid McKinstry, he did allow a few passes, but I think he still played a good game. It's just Boutte and forgetting the other guy's name. He had a big game too for LSU, but the guy, he basically destroyed Ricks. But
Jannard Jenkins.
Yeah, Jenkins. And then there were some plays, like especially near the end when Jaden Daniels took a big had that big run late in the fourth quarter. I think there was no safety back. I can't remember who, but usually it's Helms that bites too hard on coverage, and that's what you expect from Helms. He's more of a hard hitter, not a coverage guy. But I'm not going to ramble. But what do you think? Was it offense, defense? I think it's more offense in the line, the O-line.
Well, yeah, you've got a lot of astute analysis there. I would say that it was more offense for most of the game, but it was defense in the last, half of the fourth quarter. It became an offensive game in the fourth quarter. It was a defensive game for 3+ quarters, and then it became an offensive game in which the defenses may have just the offenses may have figured something out, or the defenses might have just been worn out, physically worn out from playing so hard and being dominant, that the offense has started to move. And I think really Bama's biggest issue in the fourth quarter was containing Jaden Daniels as a runner. Is where they started to, give up big plays.
Right, but no team has really able to contain Jaden Daniels this season. Well, except for the games where he was just throwing so badly that they could as a runner. But like, the passing game has obviously gotten much better. But also like the defensive line hasn't been as good. And like before the season, I thought like Will Anderson, for example, I didn't think he was going to have the season he did last season, because last season he put up some ridiculous numbers. And I also noted was that interior linemen, even though they do get in there, like Byron Young, I think he had a sack or two this game, but like consistently, because last season they had Fedarian Mathis, and I believe he led all defensive tackles in college football last year in sacks. And he was a very underrated player for the defense. So now, even though Byron Young has been there longer, he's not quite the player that like Mathis or some of the other players. And I think against like they've also had some depth issues there and on defensive tackle. So there's that too. But also like there were a couple of times where I just saw Will Anderson like walking, or like I don't know, maybe he just felt a step slower. I don't know, but.
Well, obviously, Will Anderson's gained all sorts of attention this year, as he should have last year. I think when you're able to see what they show on TV and get a good ISO on Will Anderson, you see how much they help out. There was one play in particular that was outlined where LSU brought a tight end in motion, and then they brought him back in motion and snap the ball at just the right time for that tight end to help the tackle on the right side to block Will Anderson.
Right. I saw one play against Tennessee where they kind of built a wall around him, but not like a wall, like a straight line, but it was more like a triangle. The guy blocking Will Anderson would come up on him, and then they had two linemen like sitting lower, because in case if he gets beat, there's going to be someone who picks him up on either side. And also that Tennessee game is a lot of players didn't beat their one-on-one coverage, even some of that in the LSU game too. But yeah, no, I still think the defense was good. It was just mainly LSU's defensive line pushing Bama's O-line into Bryce so that he couldn't see over the guys, and him having
that happened quite a bit too. Absolutely. So his height had something to do with that, but there were a couple of really good sky cam shots overhead that showed that the nose tackle for LSU would push the pocket and get in his face. He couldn't step up. He couldn't see. And he knew where somebody was, and he had seen them a split second earlier, but he didn't have the lane to be able to throw it. He was just kind of almost guessing to where the ball should be.
Oh yeah. Seth McLaughlin, I think that's his name, for the center, did not play well. I believe JC Latham too also led a couple of sacks. And he's like a big 5-star sophomore. I was kind of hoping he would not allow that, but yeah, I think that's the game. But I got one question about the Tennessee game, because this is what I feel about the Tennessee game is what really opens up the offense for them is their deep ball, and even though they were covered, there were still a couple plays where like, because Jalen Hyatt's so freaking fast, you would have like a foot of space between like him and his defender, and like there's still separation between him and like the safety. And Hendon Hooker's shown that even when he has a little bit of room, Jalen Hyatt, he can pinpoint those throws. And I feel like today he just wasn't able to do that. And once that was taken out of the equation, it became harder for Tennessee to generate some offense because they definitely had a decent amount of solid running plays where they got like 4 or 5 rushing yards, but then, they couldn't put up a big drive, if you know what I'm trying to say. And then making Hendon Hooker having to, complete a lot of just short passes that really didn't keep the pylon pushing. I don't know if that's what you also saw as well. So just wondering what you think about that.
Well, I'm always trying to watch about 3 games at the same time, so I don't know that I saw it that precisely, but I think it was pretty obvious that Georgia's front overwhelmed Tennessee's entire offensive line, but especially the tackles and especially the left tackle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And, obviously Georgia's defense, they're big, strong, and they play with so much speed. It's ridiculous, but still, I do feel like if Hooker was able to make like those crazy big shots, that would have put more pressure on like Georgia's secondary. Maybe it would open up the running game too, because like if you look at against Bama, for example, what also made Tennessee so effective against Alabama was how they were able to run the ball on them, so that even when Alabama stacked the box, they could. Tennessee would obviously have an open route, or even if they just lined up 3 guys, then they would just run the ball kind of thing, And I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling, my bad, but
no, you're good. You're good. Anything else tonight?
Oh man, yes, I do. Man, I'm trying to pick. I have like 16 questions. I'm trying to pick which one I should talk about. Okay, because I haven't heard much about these teams.
Yeah.
So what has happened to Purdue and Maryland? Because I haven't been watching in the past couple of weeks, and it seems like they just fallen off. I don't know what's happening. Do you know?
It's a great question. It's a great question because early in the season, I thought Purdue was the best team in the division. I thought that they were maybe the 4th best team in the conference. Of course, they took Penn State to the wire. I think they kind of got ripped off against Syracuse on the road. Should have won that game. The officials kind of took that. But what I saw was a prolific passing offense, the 2nd best offense from a throwing standpoint, 2nd best offense in the Big Ten at the time. That's what I expected. Correct. That's what I saw. Tremendous tight end in Payne Durham. They started to run the ball. The first time that they really had to run the ball was Aiden O'Connell was banged up, and they ran it against Minnesota, a very formidable run defense. And so there were just reasons for me to be high on Purdue. And the defense, I thought, played well in most of those games to a certain extent, although they had some leaks in the secondary, but most teams do. And then I know one thing that happened is Aiden O'Connell got hurt, and I don't know that he's ever been right. So that's one thing.
Didn't there like
get hurt? They really haven't been able to throw the ball around like they did prior to him getting hurt.
Okay.
That's one big thing.
Okay, no, that's some good information. Didn't also their like star receiver get
because he missed the FAU game and he came back for the Minnesota game, and they noticeably changed their offense to not expose him in the pocket, and then also just didn't throw the same type passes. When I watched Aiden O'Connell against Syracuse, it was a laser show. He was just phenomenal. And then he gets hurt late in that game. He doesn't play against FAU. They play him against Minnesota because they really needed him, but he was just a different player. I don't think he's ever recovered from that.
Yeah, no, that probably could be it, because the Big Ten West. I remember a previous weekend, I was just saying I don't know, this division is really bad, but you proved me right that it's very entertainingly even if it's bad, it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
And
we now have Illinois at 4-2, and we've got 4 teams chasing them at 3-3.
Right. And that's the thing, because like Wisconsin, you never know with them. And like I'll speak about Illinois real quick, because there was something in that Michigan game I realized is like whenever Michigan got big runs, they were able to open these really big holes for the running back, and he would just run up for like 10 plus yards, not even getting touched.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, and that's the thing about Illinois too. Their defense, I still think their defense is elite, top tier. Because I remember against Minnesota, I think what is his name? Ibrahim. He ran for over 100 yards, but they were like, we're just going to take away the passing game, because that's what their thing is. They just completely take away the passing game. But
yeah, it was a tough 100 yards too.
Right. It was a tough 100 yards, but at the same time, at the same time, maybe it's probably just, I'm probably just overreacting. This is just one game, but like there were a couple of times, even when he would have the Michigan State running back would have an open hole, there would be like no one around. They would like, I don't know if they picked up someone else in coverage or if they blitzed. I wasn't looking too closely, but maybe I'm just overreacting. This is still probably the best team, but there's definitely a reason to believe they can not be the Big Ten West winner, because as I said, Wisconsin, you never know with them. And obviously you just never know with the Big Ten West.
No, we don't. It should be interesting because Illinois' got that lead both in the win column and then also head-to-head against 2 of those 4 teams. However, they've got to go to Michigan, and you got to think that that's most likely going to be a loss. So it should be interesting. Appreciate you being here. Call back anytime, sir.
Appreciate you having me. Goodbye.
All right, let's pick up some of these super chats. I apologize if I missed any. I hope I didn't miss any super chats, because that is on me, because we never miss super chats. Those always have to be acknowledged, and I appreciate them. Addison, appreciate your contribution here. Ole Miss fan Addison says, is LSU outright SEC Western champions for the rest of the season? I think that's a bit tongue-in-cheek. Of course, not Addison, but if LSU runs the table, they are the SEC Western Division champions. They control the division based on the head-to-head against Ole Miss. If that's a legitimate question, I'm answering it for you. If it's tongue-in-cheek, then I will certainly just play along. But if Ole Miss will slip up once, then, or I'm sorry, if LSU slips up once against either Texas A&M or Arkansas, then of course Ole Miss can run the table and win the SEC West. Georgia Reload is a person of honor and integrity, and I hope you are still listening tonight, because Georgia Reload promised super chats for every Georgia touchdown, which I believe would be 3. They scored 27. That's 21. Should have had a safety. But anyway, so thank you so much for the super chats, Georgia Reload. Thank you so much for being a person of honor. And we hope you are celebrating and having a great time after the big win. All right, 2 more calls. We got Chris. We got George. Christopher's on tonight. How you doing tonight? Christopher. Hello. Going once. Going twice. Christopher, are you there?
Yes.
Christopher.
Yes.
How you doing?
Good. I'm sorry. I got disconnected, Mark. It's nothing you did, though. You don't have to blame yourself. So. Well, it's me, because I don't know how to operate my phone.
No, you're
fine.
You are fine. Just whatever you can do to shut off the reverb so everybody can hear me. Everybody can hear me again. It's there's a reverb through your.
Hold on.
In such way.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Is that better?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to waste your time, Mark. I think
you're not wasting my time.
Well, I don't want to waste your time is what I'm trying to tell you. Actually, and I've already kind of mentioned all this, and people don't like it, so I'll leave it just for what it is. But Oregon, I think it was when they beat BYU, or maybe it was when they beat Baylor. I can't remember. Or they didn't play Baylor, did they? Anyway, I think Oregon maybe ought to be given some, credit, even though I know they got beat real bad by Georgia. But, I kind of wonder, do those I don't know what they're called, or they're like was it a week 0 game? I don't really remember, but
No.
and I know it was completely lopsided, but
week 1. Yeah.
Should those count? And I guess the question I might have is, and I know, Georgia won by a substantial margin, and I didn't think Oregon looked especially very good, but do you think that the same amount of weight maybe should be placed on a week 1 game, I guess, as far as evaluating a team? Because I kind of think that Oregon, if they can close strong and all that, I kind of think maybe they ought to be kind of given a position, or at least and I don't know, I'm not the one to make that decision, but if they can close out real strong, they still would have to play would they have to play maybe the winner of the USC-UCLA game? I'm not for sure how that works in the title game, but I would think if they could close out real strong and beat everybody on the schedule, maybe. What do you think about? And maybe you've already talked about it, but what's your thinking about putting a one-loss Pac-12 champion in the? Do you think that's a good idea, or would you prefer maybe rather than a Pac-12 team, maybe a SEC team, maybe like Alabama, or I guess not Alabama, but maybe not LSU either. I can't think of Tennessee, I guess. Would you prefer maybe Tennessee not as a champion, or would you maybe give a priority? Because that's where I kind of think Oregon being not undefeated, but undefeated in conference play maybe would get a slot ahead of a runner-up for a major conference, or do you think that's not a good idea?
Well, I think you make a valid point that there's 2 ways to look at evaluating somebody's season. One would be that, to your point, teams change throughout a season, and we're going to be playing the playoff at the end of the year. So in a sense, we want the 4 best teams, or what we evaluate to be the 4 best teams at that point, not the 4 best teams in September, the 4 best teams in December. And the fluidity of a college football season means that teams get better or they get worse. Most of them, I believe, get better. But there are injuries and other factors involved, and new coaches take more time to acclimate their teams and work through a season. So to Oregon's defense, of course, they had a new coaching staff taking on a new roster and played Georgia the first week of the season. So that's one way to look at it, to say we should weight the later games more and understand that teams change and we want the 4 best teams now. However, you have to honor the season. You have to honor all the results of the season. So that's another way to look at it, just to say the resume is the resume, and whether you won or lost a game in week 1 versus week 12, they should all be measured the same because your record is what it is. So I think both of those views are valid. They're just different.
Well, I guess the reason I bring it up, and it's like I said, I don't want to put, I guess, kind of where I'm concerned. I'm not really concerned, I guess. I mean, I don't have any objections, I guess, to putting, if Tennessee, if they can close strong, I mean, why not include Tennessee? That's not, I don't know, though. I just kind of think, if, and I was kind of, and, I put things in chat that I don't really mean. I kind of said I didn't think Tennessee belonged there, even if they, I'm a little, I guess, biased maybe against the SEC, and maybe without good cause. I mean, in all fairness, I think the SEC probably is the best conference, and I don't really object to maybe putting a Tennessee in over maybe a one-loss Pac-12 team if Tennessee demonstrates that they can, challenge, I guess, is what ultimately I think was determine who goes. But, I just kind of wonder, though, if you're not going to put, like, I don't even know if it'll be Oregon, because, like I said, there's several teams I think in the chase for the Pac-12 championship. But I kind of wonder why we can't know in advance, and maybe it's not good to know in advance, but is there not a set of criteria that they look at besides, if they're going to put, let's just say they put Tennessee in, because I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but is there do they have like a list or anything that they look at that says, okay, in this circumstance with like a Pac-12 that maybe might not, measure as strongly up against maybe an SEC team that maybe had a tougher, I guess, schedule? Is there not something that they kind of look at, or is it, how did they make that decision? Do you know?
Well, I think you're hitting on the frustration of most people. The frustration is that the committee does cite their criteria, but they don't seem to apply it consistently across to every situation. So for one situation, they may say the resume is what's most important. In another situation, they will say, we are simply selecting the 4 best teams. Other situations, they will say, as they did from the very first year, they said the conference championship is what matters.
Okay.
So they apply, they have, we could all sit and accumulate a list of various points that they've made throughout these 8 years, going on 9, but they don't seem to apply them all equally to every situation.
One other thing, and I know you want to get to your next caller, and I don't want to like take you away from him. It's George, and I like George, so we kind of want to put George on here, what he has to say. But one thing, and I think I've already mentioned it, and I tend to repeat myself a lot, and I apologize for that, Mark. I don't have a lot of information that I can really give people that they don't already know about anyway. It's kind of a shortcoming on my part, but what I would like to see, I guess, even though I know we've already kind of seen how Oregon. But it might not be Oregon. I mean, like I said, there's USC. I think there's UCLA. Was there any other? I don't know that there were any other Pac-12 teams really that can win the championship. But let's just say that it's USC or whoever, because they have probably the best chance, USC. But let's just say it's USC that beats Oregon or whatever. And would that be? Do you think that would make a better? I guess a better result for a playoff than maybe a Tennessee or how would you assess it? Would you maybe give more priority to a USC, or would you rather have a Tennessee get another chance? Or
well, I would like to see as equal or even distribution from around the country in various conferences as possible, rather than concentrating in one conference. That's why I believe we have conferences and conference championships.
Well, but I guess what I'm trying to get at, because I think there's a pretty good chance that the Pac-12 might not get in. I'm not really trying to exclude them, because I don't think it's my place to do it. But, I kind of think with circumstances being, like with the Rose Bowl, I don't know, is the Rose Bowl, it's not part of the playoff this year, is it? Or is it?
That's a great question. I don't know what the rotation is and what it is this year. I believe the Rose Bowl is not in the playoff this year, from what I remember.
Well, I guess my point is, if I'm making a point, I think there might be a pretty good chance that the Pac-12 champion might not even get in. And I'm not trying to put it like a curse on them or nothing, but it just looks like kind of already heard like Paul Feinbaum, and I don't know if these people really know, but when they I think it's one of those things like when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen sort of thing. And so Paul Feinbaum said there's a chance that they might supposedly get 3 SEC teams in. I think he says 3 so that they'll get 2. And so I'm kind of thinking there's probably a pretty good chance, I think, that you might see 2 SEC teams in the playoff, which if they do that, that's obviously going to exclude somebody. And I think that's a pretty good chance that it might be the Pac-12 champion. But that's not necessarily what I want. So I just kind of wonder if there's something to maybe circumvent that so that we get the Pac-12 champion represented.
Well, when we move to a 12-team playoff in a few years, they will be protected. As it stands right now, there are a few things that worked against a 3-team SEC scenario and some other things that worked for it today. So Clemson losing helps the SEC get more teams in, but Tennessee losing in convincing fashion hurts the SEC and the ability to get another team in, as opposed to Tennessee and Georgia playing down to the last second.
Right. Well, no, I guess kind of what I'm asking you, though, since we already know who's better between Georgia and Tennessee, and let's just pretend that we know that. I know we don't know, but let's just pretend that we do know that Georgia advances. I guess it's kind of, would they look at that game and maybe say, well, Oregon really got beat badly by Georgia, and Tennessee at least made it, somewhat. Is that how they would they make it based on one game, or do you think they would just, because I kind of wonder, because I kind of think in that circumstance, if it's between Oregon and Tennessee, and I think if you have one that won a conference championship,
sure,
I would think maybe you might give more weight to the conference championship. But if they isolated on the one game, I mean, then it would be one of those things where they might say, well, yeah, we could put Oregon in there, but they got beat so bad that nobody wants to see that again. So would they maybe use that as the?
Yes, I am hoping that they are going to honor the conference championship. But if Oregon does win the Pac-12 and there's a situation where they are a 12-1 Pac-12 champion and they're being compared to an 11-1 Tennessee team, and they have one
additional game
common. Well, so on Oregon's side is, of course, the conference championship and the additional data point.
So that's what I hope they do too. I hope they put Oregon in there in that circumstance. That's what I hope happens.
But on the Tennessee side is the comparison of how they played against Georgia, and also the metrics that tell us that the SEC is a better conference. So that is going to be up to the playoff committee to decide and I'm sure within that 13-person committee, there are going to be disagreements, but they're going to have a consensus.
They don't use any metrics that kind of give them a.
Oh, sure they do.
I noticed
they don't officially use them. They don't say, well, this is the reason we are taking this metric, and Oregon finished third in this metric and Tennessee fourth. Therefore, we're taking Oregon. They use all sorts of metrics and data to help them arrive at a decision.
Okay. All right. That's about all I have for you, Mark. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Last up tonight. Look at this. We got George here. George, what's going on? George, you're on mute. Can you hear me? Okay. There you are.
Okay. I can hear you.
Fire away.
Is that good?
Good to see you. What's going on?
Man, I am up late. Hey, I'm in Oregon and it's midnight. You're on the East Coast. What the hell are you guys doing up this late?
It's 2 a.m. Well, it just backed up to 2 a.m., I guess. Can somebody answer that for me? Because we moved the clocks back an hour tonight. So I don't know if that already happened. It usually happens at 2.
That's a good question.
So maybe it's going to go back to 1. That would be nice.
It's 11:56 in Oregon.
No, so it's really 3 o'clock in the morning here, but it moved back to 2 o'clock because I've been on for 3.5 hours. So
Mark,
George,
I'm 62 years old.
Yeah.
I read yesterday that Oregon's going to stop doing daylight savings time. And I don't even know how to calculate what that means in my head.
So
I don't like, what's the point? What am I supposed to think when I hear that? What difference does it make? Who cares? Do it, don't do it. I'm still going to do my daily routine. I don't care.
It's just going to change when it's dark and when it's light.
By an hour.
Sure.
I just want to say, Connor Johnson, Zona Tucson. I typed in a few names, but I can't keep doing it while I'm talking to you. These are good guys. Hey, me and some of the guys in the chat, we want to know if you could use your clout. Let's get Russia and the Ukraine to both pick a football team and battle it out, and whoever wins, wins, and loses, loses. One can pick. There can be no eye gouging, or you can't bring any knives on the field, but a good old hard-nosed football game.
That would be such a better way to solve these problems, is to say, okay, we can spare a lot of lives right here and a lot of heartache.
Russia would say, we take Ohio State, and Ukraine would say, we're taking Georgia. And then we could just settle it right there. No referees. There's just 2 rules: no eye gouging, and you can't bring any knives onto the field. Like, let's play football.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ohio State and Georgia, go at it. Go at it.
That'd be great.
Hard. And we're playing by 1950s rules when guys can do whatever they want, hit each other in the head, clothesline, the whole deal.
With a leather helmet.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know how to solve the college football problem, and it's fun. It makes it fun for everybody, just like they have the NIT in basketball. And I've mentioned this before, but it's good enough to have the top 4. And then let's have the next top 4 and the next top 4. Take all the bowl games. You can have 4 championships. And then if they want, maybe we'll play one more game with those 4 teams that won those 4 16-team championships, I mean, we can make a lot of fun out of this. I think Middle Tennessee State should get in there, God damn it. I think they deserve it this year. They could be in the bottom thing, but if they win that division, now they play the people that won the other 3 divisions. One more game, 2 more games. Sorry.
Beat Miami. Yeah.
It's just a thank you card.
Gators won today
from America. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. There could be more than one trophy. You could be like, it's like varsity, junior varsity. I'm sorry, but we're going to play the bowl games anyway. Why not make them a part of something?
We already have bowl games and give trophies for the bowl games.
So why not make it a part of something? First 4, second 4, third 4. We're just playing the bowl games you're going to play anyway, but should you win out of, I don't know, never mind. It's too many games. It would have to become a year-round sport. It's not going to work. Never mind.
What we're going to do
right now. It takes too many extra games. You can't do it.
What we're going to do right now is direct everyone over to the USC channel because I'm wrapping up right here. And the USC post game is still going on with our guys, Tim and Tony and Rick.
Junior varsity football. You know what? Ever since they did this coaching changes, transfer portal, NIL thing, I have no idea what's going on anymore. I'm confused.
Well, just watch the games.
Between those, okay, eye test, right. Okay, go by the eye test.
Just watch the games.
If you take that into consideration, the coaching changes and the transfer portal and the NIL, right? And you throw in the referees calling these weird games and manipulating the outcome of them by stupid calls, phantom calls, where the commentator's going, I didn't see it, but there's no replay on that play for some reason. And they just continue on 15 yards. I don't know, man. This is why Russia's not going to go with this damn football game. They're going to say, have you seen a football game lately? That's why we got to get rid of the referees. Let's put body sensors on the players. And if you don't get hit by more than 5 Gs, it's not a personal foul. Like if someone really hits you all their might, they get a personal foul. But if that sensor doesn't go off, something. I'm tired of junior college professors and bank executives and insurance salesmen being referees. I don't know what they're up to.
Yeah, it's a bit rough at times. George, we've got a USC show. We're closing shop here, and we got a USC show going. Why don't you head on over?
Is the game over? Has USC won yet?
Yes, they won. The USC show is on right now.
It was out of balance. What was the score?
It was close.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what the score was.
So we're going to watch a press conference?
No, you're going over to the USC channel.
To watch a press conference?
No, our post game's on.
Oh, your post game.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought we were going to watch the coach talk or something.
No.
All right. Well, we better get the hell out of here then.
Just dropped it in the chat, everyone. Head on over to the USC channel.
Account 22. I'll see you later. Zach Bolton, I agree. Clint Moses. Talk to you later, man.
All right,
I like Bilal Assaf.
Thanks, Joseph.
He's a good man. Joseph Davison, I'm not confused. Hey, I could do this all day. Never mind.
That super chat. Thank you for that.
Hey, the real MVP asked me what I thought of Florida.
Yeah.
I think we're 1 inch away from being Miami. I hope we get our shit together.
There you go.
I mean, stuff together.
All right,
our
everyone.
stuff together.
Head on over to the USC channel. I've left the link in the chat. We will see you there.
All right, later.
Good night, George.
Florida's lucky they're not 1-7 right now.
Absolutely.
So we better get our shit together.
Good night, George. Good night, everyone.
All right, later, Gators.
All right, everyone. Top 25 that actually makes sense coming out tomorrow, as well as conference power rankings. We've been on here way too long, but we appreciate the good crowd and everyone being here. And again, I've dropped the link to the USC channel in the chat. Head on over there to talk some more college football. Until next time.